what I asked for. So good evening. Whoops.
Tina Henkel is going to do the recognition for the teacher.
Oh, okay, great. Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, February 12th. It's 6:01 in the evening. This is a Weston Board of Education regular meeting. We are obviously meeting in person, and we will hold our March meeting in person as well. We have a quorum, so the first item, excuse me, on the agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would stand. Except me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the January 16th, 2024 meeting of the Weston Board of Education. Are there any changes that any of the members see? If not, can I have a motion to approve? Is there a second? Great. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item on the agenda, number 3B, is the meeting minutes, approval of the meeting minutes from the January 18th Weston Board of Education Public Forum number 2. Any changes to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. Here we go. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3C is to approve the meeting minutes from the January 22nd Weston Board of Education Special Meeting Budget Workshop. Any changes to those? May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Number 3D, meeting minutes from the January 23rd, 2024 Weston Board of Education Special Meeting. This is the meeting where you approved and adopted the fiscal 2025 recommended operating and capital budgets. Are there any changes to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the last item on approval of the minutes are the meeting minutes from the February 1st, 2024 Weston Board of Education Executive Session. Any changes to those? I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. The fourth item on the agenda is a recognition of former Weston Board of Education member and Vice Chairperson Melissa Walker.
Thank you. I'd like to start, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Melissa, where are you? Okay. Yes, give a wave. And then we'll ask you to come up. So we had waited purposefully for when we were in person to honor and recognize Melissa Walker's service to the Board of Education. And so that's tonight. It was postponed because last month we had snow. So it really gives me great pleasure. And I am so thankful for the service that Melissa Walker gave to the Board of Education, both in the capacity of Vice Chair. I believe you joined in 2019, is that right? And for all of us, when we think back to 2019, those were the COVID years. So although you think 2019 to 2024, it's really like multiply it by 3. The amount of hours, the tireless effort that Melissa put in. This is a completely volunteer position for all of the board members. They volunteer their time many hours beyond just a Board of Ed meeting once a month. And so I wanted to start by saying, Melissa, I truly appreciate all that you brought to the district. You were wonderfully calm, professional. You dealt with some of the most challenging issues that the board had to face during COVID. I know that you were there when I transitioned as superintendent. You contributed a great deal on the policy committee, and your legal background was most appreciated. And so we have missed you. greatly in the months that have passed since your departure. So, thank you.
And if I can say something, as many people know, I made a transition from serving on the Board of Finance for a number of years, and I actually thought after 10 years of serving on the Board of Finance and 10 years in Weston and 10 years prior to that in Westport, that I would be well prepared to serve on the Board of Education, since I've reviewed it any number of times in budgets. And little did I know it's one of the most complex positions one can assume. Melissa made my transition as seamless as possible. No question was a stupid question, and certainly I probably asked a number of those. Just terrific to work with, just a terrific board member. To Lisa's point, her legal background, it was invaluable for a number of the issues and things that we need to address on a board. And I can't say enough thank yous for all the support and all the good words that we had over the 4 or 5 months we served together. Anyone else would like to make a comment? Or?
Is this our Melissa Love Fest?
Yeah, it's a Melissa Love Fest. Not quite the Super Bowl, but it's close.
That's okay. Where are you, Melissa? There you are, way back there. I actually have been thinking about what I wanted to say today, and that is thank you. I had the pleasure of serving for 3 years with Melissa on the board, and she was always a steady voice of reason. She always led in times where it wasn't always easy to lead, and you did a great job. And I learned so much from Melissa as a board member, and just overall, she's just a wonderful person, a great parent, and we miss her so much on this board. So thank you for all your time, Melissa. I really enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Melissa, just to echo what everybody else has been saying, you always came in and said things in such a clear and to the point, eloquent way to bring us all together and help us stay focused on the issues. And I think we were so much of a better board for all of the work that you've done, and thank you for that.
I guess as the vice chair, I'll wrap it up. I had a short apprenticeship, but a good apprenticeship. So I have big shoes to fill. And thank you again. And hope to see you up in GLP this summer.
Melissa, if you could come up, we have a token of appreciation for you. I'd also like to thank Allie. I know your daughter's in the audience, and Will, who's not here studying, because, when, as you all know, when you're sitting on a board and you're volunteering all these hours, it becomes, a challenge also for the family. And there were, I'm sure, many times where you wish you could have been at Allie's events, Will's events, and you weren't, because you here were looking out for all of Weston's children. So special shout out to you, Allie, and to Will as well.
Public comment.
Allie, take her home to celebrate, okay?
The next item on the agenda is a recognition of Teacher of the Year. Dr. Henkel?
Good evening. I have the honor and pleasure of announcing this year's 2023-24 Teacher of the Year, representing Weston Public Schools. Ms. Nguyen, are you in the audience? If you could rise, please, come forward. I'm going to speak about you for a little bit. Stay right there. Stay right there. No, I'm going to talk about you first, and then we can do the round of applause again. No, stay right there. Stay right there. Sharon, come stay right there. You have to stand right in the middle there. We're going to talk about you for just a moment. Stay right there. So Mrs. Nguyen is a 20-year veteran of the Weston Public Schools, 10 years of which have been at Weston Intermediate School. She started in 2001 at Hurlbut Elementary School and is currently a grade 5 math and science teacher. She is also a math Olympiad coach and has been a volunteer and judge for Odyssey of the Mind at the Connecticut State Tournament since 2015. She is regularly supporting her students that have graduated out of her classroom, specifically on senior writing projects and providing college recommendations. I was fortunate to be able to accompany her at the state level recognition, where we got really good front row seats because Sharon, Miss Wynn, was also the finalist for the Connecticut Teacher of the Year. At the heart of Miss Wynn's teaching and learning philosophy, she is constantly building lasting connections with her students and families. It is an honor to have her represent the Weston Public Schools. Please join me this evening as we celebrate our 2024 Teacher of the Year, Grade 5 Math and Science teacher at Weston Intermediate School, Mrs. Sharon Wynn.
Thank you, Dr. Henkel. The fifth item on the agenda is the Student Board of Education representative comments.
Hi everyone, I'm Gianna. Nivi couldn't make it with me here today, but I'm just here to provide you guys with some updates about what's been going on at Weston High School. So first things first, this week we have our school pep rally, which is our annual Super Bowl pep rally, and leading up to this pep rally, we've had donations, a food drive donation to our advisory classes, and the winning advisories compete for a prize at our pep rally in front of the whole school. We also have our junior class decorating the hallway for Valentine's Day, and in addition to that, the senior class has also been selling sweatpants and bandanas along with a bunch of other things to try and raise money for the end of the school year to, for our graduation activities. We've had a lot of awesome opportunities at Weston High School. For example, we just recently had our Holocaust Remembrance Day, where a Holocaust survivor came in to talk to the students about their experiences. And in addition, the junior class got to see the Frederick Douglass play recently. And the student government members heard from a challenge success representative, and we heard some very cool ideas from his perspective about school environment and creating an inclusive, safe environment for all students. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys today.
That's quite a bit. Thank you. Thanks, Gianna. Item number 6 is public comment. Jody, I just want to point out that for the public, with our communications committee, we've created a procedures and guidelines that will be included in the normal information packets, as well as available for people to pick up when they come to our public meetings. Jody, you just want to describe?
Timed it out at 2.5. I could have written more. Hi, my name is Gus Christensen. I'm a Weston Public School parent. I live at 65 Norfield Road. I have one child in 4th grade at WIS and another in kindergarten at Hurlbut, and I'm here today to talk about smartphones. Specifically, I am here to ask that the school board get them out of our public schools, ideally through a complete ban on all school property. My children don't have smartphones yet. They don't have phones at all, and our 4th grader knows not to ask, even as some of her friends are starting to get them. So while we don't yet have firsthand experience with the damage that smartphones can cause to kids, we know full well what they do to us as adults, and we can read the research to see what they're doing to kids, and we can just look around and see in our community and see the reports that we all hear every day. And I think we all know that the answer is that it's not good. They breed distraction, they destroy attention, and those issues are bad enough for adults, but they're terrible for kids, and especially for kids in schools. As I'm sure you're all aware, our own U.S. Senator Chris Murphy is hard at work on federal legislation to limit children's harmful exposure to social media. And I applaud him for that, and I hope that our dysfunctional Congress is able to take meaningful action on that critical issue. But there is no reason for us to wait for Washington to fight through billions of dollars of tech industry lobbying to produce some watered-down law. We can and should act at the state and the local level. Right here in Weston, you, the collective members of the Weston Board of Education, have more than enough power to get these instruments of distraction out of the hands of our kids. You can ban them in Weston public schools, and I firmly believe that you should do it and do it now. I could come in here with a stack of academic research, and I'd be happy to follow up with it if any of you are seriously unsure. But I think we all know that this is like climate change or the measles vaccine. We all know that the scientists and doctors who study this stuff agree. Both social media and smartphones themselves are bad for kids in many ways, with no credible arguments that they're actually good for kids in any meaningful way at all. The people who make these devices, the senior executives at companies like Apple and Google and Facebook, are well known for not letting their own children have them. But it is incredibly difficult for individual parents to stand against the tide. We need collective action such as only the school district itself can take. Not many school districts have done this yet. You would be in the vanguard, but you would be on the right side of history. And you wouldn't be the first. Dozens of school districts around the country have already taken this step, and I haven't heard anything negative about their experiences. The largest school district to have banned smartphones so far is, I believe, Orlando, Florida, with over 200,000 students. They banned smartphones at the beginning of this school year, and so far all reports are positive: a reduction in disciplinary action and mental health concerns, overwhelmingly positive feedback from teachers and from students, and limited complaints. As to the things that smartphones can do that some families feel they need, whether it's constant communication, location tracking, scheduling, or something else, there are other devices that can handle all of these things without flashing screens, social media access, or internet distractions. Please be leaders on this issue and take action sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thanks, Gus.
Thank you. Are these adjustable? Gus is a little taller than me. So we'll tilt that down. Can everybody hear me all right? Good evening, everyone. My name is Ethan Blinder. I live at 42 Greenlee Lane, and I am the father of 3 children here in our school system, a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergartner. I'm a little relieved to see that there was a mass exodus here. I thought everyone was here to see me speak. I'm much happier that it was to recognize somebody who served on the board and one of the remarkable teachers here in our school system. I'm a little surprised that I'm actually here to talk about smartphones as well. I expected fully to be the only one here, but I'm following up in person on an email which I sent to the members of the board on January 16th, expressing some of my concerns around the use of cell phones in our children. And while I think Gus took a wonderful approach talking about the academics and some of the necessity of removal, there's a lot of science out there. I can't speak to science. I have an undergraduate degree in hotel administration and then a law degree from Brooklyn Law School, so I leave science to the scientist. For me, it's more about my own personal experience with these devices and acknowledging the impact the devices had on me, and as a parent, trying to do better for my children. And do as I say, not as I do, so to speak. So in my email, I spoke about 3 primary concerns I have. The first and foremost being distraction. I think we've all felt that tug from our pocket to reach for the cell phone and check for an email or check for a message or scroll on social media or the newest feed. And I, quite unfortunately, fall victim to that as well. And I've personally seen how it impacts my day-to-day, whether it be in interactions with other people or with my own family. And seeing the struggle that I have myself in controlling these urges to reach for the cell phone, I can only imagine the difficulty faced by our children who may not already have that self-awareness and self-knowledge about how it is necessary and appropriate to interact with people in the real world. Another one of my primary concerns is the access to social media and these feelings of social isolation and dysphoria. Again, I personally have experienced it when scrolling through Instagram or Facebook and seeing pictures of friends of mine on these remarkable vacations with their children, and everybody is happy and smiling, and I think to myself, why am I not capable of doing this for my family? Why do I feel so drained and tired? Why do I feel incapable of making what appears to be very meaningful connections with my wife and my children in these wonderful environments? And I have to remind myself that what I'm seeing may not be reality. What I'm seeing is a snapshot. It's a moment in time. And I think every morning we all have the energy to take a selfie with ourselves and our children around the breakfast table, only to then put the phone down and watch breakfast dissolve into a mayhem of trying to get everybody to eat, dressed, and out the door on time to get on the bus. And again, I have these feelings myself. I'm a 38-year-old man with 3 children. I like to think that I've found myself to a pretty mature place in adulthood, and yet I still have these feelings. And I wonder, how would my children react to such images? Images of people with their friends and their concerns about, oh, do I have enough friends? Or am I doing things that are fun enough or cool enough? Do I fit in? And this disconnect between reality and what we see through our devices. And lastly, I fear access to information. As a parent, I certainly strive to protect my children from the horrors of the world. And I know that is a losing battle. It is not something that we can do perfectly, and at the end of the day, not necessarily something we want to do, because they have to live in this world. And when we were children, of course, you'd learn things from your friends on the bus or at school that maybe their parents had shared with them, that your parents were not kind enough to share with you. But the breadth and quantity and depth of information which our children have access to through these little devices is horrifying. I know myself, scrolling through social media once again, and you see images and videos of things that are happening in our world, which are devastating. And my viewing and processing that information from the place of a 38-year-old adult is very different from that of my 8-year-old or my 6-year-old. Well, thank you very much. I apologize for taking so much time. And I would urge everybody here to think about how we could simply help protect our children from these devices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ethan. Appreciate it. No? Great. Thank you. The next item is item 7A. It's a discussion and a vote on a change to the April-May Weston Board of Education schedule.
Yes, thank you. If I may, we had, to kind of refresh the board's recollection, in the beginning of the school year, we set the first semester, and then we set the second a little bit further out. And in reflecting on those dates and trying to be sensitive to the April recess, Passover, different holidays that went on, we had originally made the decision to have the April board meeting on May 1st, and then the subsequent one in May on May 20th. And I would ask the board to, when I reflected with the administrative team, there are certain things that have to take place both in April and May, and that we would ask the board if we could please have the April meeting actually in April, the week before April break, because it works better with some of the administrative tasks and communications that we have to get out. Quite frankly, I worry from March 18th to, May 1st is a significant amount of time without hearing from us. And so we are proposing that we move that date to Monday, April 8th, and ask you to consider and approve it.
Questions? May I have a motion to change the April-May Weston Board of Education schedule to the April meeting will be April 8th?
So moved.
And the May meeting will be when? 20th?
The May meeting will stay the same. The May 1st meeting will be moved back to April.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, all those in favor? Aye, opposed?
Thank you. We will get that immediately communicated out to parents. We will make sure all the postings are corrected online so the public is aware.
Thank you. The next item is item 7B, District Improvement Plan, the mid-year progress.
Yes, if you just give us a moment, we're going to relocate our seats so people can see the screen behind us.
Oh, I guess I'm going this way.
Okay, thank you. It gives me great pride and pleasure to present our mid-year review of our district goals and our aligned action steps with the board. You will recall that we presented the district improvement plan in the early fall, and now what we would like to do is take you through approximately 30 slides with different members of the team, both at the building level and the district level, presenting as to, what was the goal and what are some of the highlights of the work that we've done. At the very end of the presentation, we can certainly entertain questions. So if I could just have your patience as we go through, jot down anything you might want to circle back on, and we'll take it from there. Does that sound okay? Okay. Oh, you're moving the flicker. Oh, that's right. That's why we had to relocate you over here. Okay. So this is the picture, obviously, of our district improvement plan. It is posted on the website. It clearly outlines what our focus is for this year, and it aligns to our vision and our mission. And that's where we can find it on the website if anyone in the public would like to see it. Along with that, you have district and school improvement plans that are all listed out for this year. The areas of focus that we're going to take you through tonight are listed there, all of the different sections. There are actually links in the presentation that can go back to show you specifically where in the booklet, the electronic booklet, it is referenced. But we would like to start first with the academic excellence. So the purpose of this evening is, how are we making progress towards our spring of 2024 goals? What are the quantitative and qualitative data we reviewed to measure that progress? And what are some of the areas of focus for the second half of the year that we believe will help us continue this work? And we will report it out again at the very end of the year, but this is really sort of a snapshot of where we are, and we're charting the work that needs to continue. I'd like to turn it over now to Dr. Henkel, who will take us through the academic goals. Tina?
Great. Thank you, Lisa. So We've been talking a lot over the last couple years about the different varieties of data points that we use when we reflect on our goals and reflect on the progress. And so you'll see this evening that within every section of our district and school improvement plans, we look at demographic data, which includes grade, gender, enrollment, special education, attendance, perception data, which is really focused on the learning environment and the experience of the students and the staff. A lot of that comes out of our school climate survey data that we receive. Our student learning data, which is what we're very familiar with, our summative and our formative assessment data, our classroom data points. And then finally, our school process data. How are our systems and structures supporting our work as we think about progress towards meeting our goals? So before we begin, we just want to make sure that we recognize that when we talk about different kinds of assessments, they're used for different purposes. Specifically this evening, when we talk about mid-year progress, we focus on formative assessment. And it's important to have a balanced approach when we think about different types of assessment and their uses. So SMART or Balanced and SAT, those are our summative assessment scores. Those are things that are more of a snapshot in time. They're a one-time assessment. It's not something that we repeat throughout the year. However, a formative assessment is something that we typically conduct at least 3 times a year. If it's a curriculum-based assessment, it could be at the end of every unit. It could be an assessment that's gathered around student achievement or performance within a unit as well. So for tonight's purposes, we're really focusing on our formative assessment tools and how those pieces of data are actually helping us make decisions as we seek to meet those end-of-year goals and targets. In addition, I want to make sure that for anyone that may be new to this conversation, that is listening or is new to the board, we've been focusing the last couple years a lot on on achievement targets and achievement data. And we received feedback last year that, it can't just all be about achievement. Like, what about growth? And so we've been really focusing on the balance between looking at achievement scores as well as growth scores over time. And so we want to make sure that we are all under the same understanding of what the difference is between achievement versus a growth target. So achievement is a one-time snapshot measurement of a student's academic performance. So it's one specific point in time versus growth, which has at least 2 points in time that we're measuring from like point A to point B or from point A to point C. And then finally, quantitative data versus qualitative data. Many of us refer to this data frequently. Quantitative is usually a numeric value. A lot of times when we think about quantitative components, we're thinking about, charts that we can actually connect data to. But on the qualitative part, we also recognize that we want to look at some survey data. We want to ask for feedback. We want to look at the action steps that we're actually employing in order to meet some of those achievement and quantitative data points. So you'll hear a lot of this as we go throughout every section of our district and school improvement plan, and other members of our central office team will talk about these aspects as well. So to get started, we're going to start with our first academic excellence area, which is in mathematics. You'll see that we organize the progress towards those goals in a district perspective, then individual by grade level. Then we look at our subgroup data, and then we look at some of our action steps that we're reflecting on at this point in time. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a district view that refers to achievement. So in math, we use the NWA assessment. We administer it 3 times a year. In the elementary grades, just so that we remember, kindergarten, we do not administer that fall assessment first in math. We wait until the winter. We give them time to acclimate and transition before we take that snapshot. So on the left-hand side, in the fall, we took a snapshot of our 1st through 9th graders, and we looked at the achievement target in the fall. NWA provides a numerical value based on the grade level that a student is in and what the average score is that a student is typically able to achieve at that point in time. That's typically at the 50th percentile, right? So right in the middle. You're on grade level if you're at the 50th percentile. In Weston, when we look at some of our goals, we actually look at the 61st percentile. We have a higher achievement rating in Weston, and so we have made a choice to look at some of those predictions at the 61st percentile. Also, we chose the 61st percentile because there's some linking studies with NWA that talks about if a student, when they get to third grade and above, if they score at the 61st percentile, then they also meet the benchmark for Smarter Balanced. Obviously, there's some wiggle room with standard deviation, but that's typically why we pick the 61st percentile. Okay, so in the fall, we have 68% of our students in grades 1 through 9 that met that number at that snapshot. And then when we took it again in the winter, we added kindergarten. So it's not a cohort, it's a different group of students, but similarly. And we have 73% of our students in grades K through 9 that met that achievement target. On the right-hand side, now we're looking at growth. So for the students in grades 1 to 9, we took out kindergartners because we didn't have a fall score, right? So from the fall to the winter, what percentage of students met the achievement target, right? Met their growth target, excuse me. So what NWA does in both literacy and math is they look at millions of data points. They're in over 23,000 public school systems. And they look at all of the individualized student achievement and growth targets, and they tell you if you receive this number in the fall and you're a first grader, then a typical amount of growth that you should make from the fall to the winter should be this number, right? And so let's say, for example, I'm Tina, I scored a 200, I'm a first grader, NWA tells me I should grow about 10 points from the fall to the winter. So what that growth pie chart shows us is how many of those students met their growth target, right? How many of those students met 10 points from the fall to the winter? Now remember, this is a black or white answer. If I only grew 9 points, where did I fall? In the red, right? So just keep that in mind as we go through it, right? You could have students that miss their growth target by 1 point, 2 points, or 3 points, and they still fall in the red. So when we unpack this at the school level and at the grade level, we really look at that those individualized scores to help us make some additional plans. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, okay, let's break this down a little bit further. So now, I know I did an extensive amount on that first slide, but now you'll kind of get the picture as we move into ELA and math a little bit more specifically. So again, the yellow is the achievement. So from the winter, how did our students score? What percentage of students met their achievement target in the fall? And what percentage met their achievement target in the winter? That is what the yellow shows. We've had some really great results in mathematics from the fall and the winter. You can see that our students, even in kindergarten, have exceeded that winter achievement target, which is beyond close to the 87% range. On the right-hand side, you'll see growth. So what percentage of students met their growth targets from the fall to the spring? And one area you might be zooming in on a little bit is that 46% for grade 3. And so one of the pieces that we do at the school level is unpack that number a little bit more clearly. For example, I might say how many students are actually in the red of their growth targets. And so if you drill down, you'll see that there's 85 students in that 46% number. Well, how many of the students actually missed that growth target? By like 3 points. So if you actually drill down into that 46%, you'll actually see that 28 kids missed their growth target by only 3 points. That's not a lot, right? We can work on that from the winter to the spring until the end of the school year. And if those students actually met and grew 3 more points, we would have hit 64%. So when you look at some of these data points, we really take time at the grade level to unpack it a little bit further. Sure. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Every student has their own individual growth target. Obviously, we're showing you the composite of all those numbers in one overall percentage. But like I said, at the school level, we unpack it and drill it down to the student level. Yeah, and so here's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as well. And so one thing I want to also pinpoint when we look at these numbers is that when you have a high achievement score, like let's say in 9th grade, we have a significant number of our students already above the average, the 61st percentile, right? But 62% of them only met their growth target. Well, one of the things that does happen is when you have a really high achievement level, there's less to grow, and so hitting that target sometimes becomes more difficult. So that's something we look at. So good question. Every time a student progresses from fall to winter to spring and moves up from kindergarten all the way to high school, the number of achievement, that score that you have to earn, gets increasingly more difficult too, because the idea is that you're learning more throughout your school trajectory, and so that number does change. I believe that's your question, right, Steve? So the number keeps moving even though you're...
No, but it seems like, so if you just follow it, it goes grade 4, 75, grade 5, 75, grade 6, 60, and then it jumps 17% in 7th grade. Is there something unique about 6th grade, or is it?
Are you looking at achievement or growth?
Achievement. So these are different groups of students, right? And so we are looking at some of those data points individually by grade level, because you'll see that every grade level has different numbers, right? And so the students are different in each one. As I said before, one thing that's important to recognize, though, is that this achievement number, in order to stay at the 61st percentile, goes up. So you still have to be growing and learning more in order to maintain that 61st percentile.
The other thing we are looking at, and correct, please interject. The other thing that we're looking at, and interject please, Dr. Henkel, is when we look at between fall and then we take it in winter, one of the things about the NWEA is the students and the content that they could be tested on, correct? They might not have covered all of that content by the time they took the test in the winter. So it's our job to go through and look and say, all right, this is a score, but why is the score the way it is? Well, let's look and see what were the content, the standards, when were they tested on it, when will they be tested on it? Oh, in the spring. So there's that analysis point too that has to take place. That's why it's important to note that these are formative assessments. So because they're national tests, they might not have covered a particular topic that is then covered in the test. And so they're not going to do well on it if it wasn't covered.
I'll give you a specific example for grade 6. Statistics is a goal area on NWA. It's actually one area that, if you unpack the different domains, that is probably the lowest of 6th grade that we're scoring on right now, because statistics isn't completely taught until the second half of the year. So that's exactly what she's talking about. It's an example.
Is that just in our district that statistics isn't taught until the second half of the year?
The curriculum that we have adopted last year, illustrative math, that is the pacing guide that they suggest, because they do a lot of conceptual ratios and proportions in the beginning half of the year before they introduce some of the statistics, which is like in the third quarter of the year.
So if that's the case, then we would see consistently next year and the year after that the grade 6 would always have a low percentage for this test in particular? Or is that, it's not a cohort issue, I guess is what I'm asking, right?
It's not a cohort issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask, so is there any relationship between 3rd and 6th being transition years and the fairly low numbers? Oh, was it?
And we've been talking about that a little bit. I can say that the standards change after second grade and they change after fifth grade. And when I say change, the depth of the standards in mathematics after the K2 band and then the 3-5 band are increasingly more difficult. For example, statistics is one of those units that the standards is really new for students when they move from fifth grade to sixth grade.
So if this is our second year using illustrative math, did we have the same results last year for the third grade and sixth grade?
Last year was lower, if I recall. I don't have sixth grade. I don't have them broken out by grade level. We could look it up. And I will say last year, although it was a pilot year, we weren't fully implementing illustrative as the curriculum outlined. So I would say this is our first year and a good baseline for illustrative in that curriculum.
So I should file this away for this time next year.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Correct. And again, keep in mind that summative assessment of the smarter balance is really where the rubber meets the road. So all of this information that we get along the way keeps helping us inform our data teams, inform the classroom teacher, inform which child needs what support and how we can give it. Because between the mixture of it's a different cohort, the curriculum, we're trying to implement a new curriculum and work through that, there's still some moving pieces. And so these are all formative. When they take the smarter balance, that will be sort of the true overall summative performance that they have.
Yeah, and we're not done yet, right? We're in the middle of the year. We know we have some areas that we're still focusing on. We have some more time. And even still, a lot of our goals that we've set from last year, if you look at the individual school level goals, for example, the goal of sixth grade was 75% at the end of the school year for Smarter Balanced. Seventh grade, the goal is 75%. We've already exceeded that in the middle. 80% for grade 8, we've already exceeded that. And then at the high school, we're looking at 75%, we've already exceeded that. So we're doing well. We know that we have some grade levels that we still have to unpack a little further and look more specifically at individual students. Okay? As I mentioned before, in our district and school improvement plans, we have a balance between achievement and growth. And we are specifically focusing around our students with disability as our subgroup when we're looking at growth goals over time. And so Tracy's going to talk a little bit about some of the growth goals based on our district goals.
Hi, everyone. I'm pleased to share our growth data for students with disabilities this evening. As we look at the slides, there's one here for math and there will be another for English language arts. I just want you to remember that we are talking about our subgroup population on these slides. So we have approximately 20 students in each grade level who have IEPs or special education needs. There is variability grade to grade. So these percentages are reflecting a much smaller subset of our overall population than has been highlighted on the previous slides. Tina already fully explained the difference between growth and achievement, so I'm just going to cut to the chase here. All of these slides are around student growth. That's how we developed our school level and district level goals for our subgroup. So looking at the NWEA math scores, we had 59% of our students in grades 1 and 2 meet their individual projected growth targets. Our goal for this year was 55%. That was based on our performance from last year. So we're in a nice place there. In grades 3 through 5, 75% of our students with disabilities met their projected growth target. Again, we're looking at fall to winter for each of these measures. Our goal for this year was 75%, so we are on target there as well. In grades 6 through 8, 58% of our students met their projected growth target. Our goal for the year is 59%, so we're just slightly below where we want to be in that area. And then for grade 9, 67% of our students with disabilities met their projected growth target. The goal we set this year based on performance last year was 50%, so we're well above that at this point, which is great. Based on the mid-year data, we're meeting or exceeding our goals for the year in math, except, as I said, for that 6 through 8 cohort where we're 1 percentage point lower than our target. I think this speaks to the efforts that are being made to really focus on individual student achievement. Remember, this is the exact same measure that all of the students in our district are participating in, and we're going to continue moving forward. So I'll turn it back over to Tina.
Great report. Thank you. So we wanted to also highlight some of the action steps. We talk about the different types of data and how that data helps inform some of our work as leaders and as support staff in the buildings. And so we wanted to highlight some of the action steps that our individual schools have been working towards to ensure that we are meeting our goals at the end of the year. So we have provided parent focus groups to talk about some of the understanding of elementary mathematics and some of those strategies to transition from school to home and how parents can help their kids at home that are connected to some of the strategies in the classroom. If you've come to our curriculum subcommittee meetings, some of these items have been highlighted in presentations from our curriculum and instruction leaders, one of which is our pilot experience that we're doing in grades 1 through 5 to update our core resource in mathematics. So we talked a little bit about the pilot of teachers that are using in the classroom, focusing around 2 different core resources moving into next school year. One is called Eureka Squared and the other is Illustrative Math. And a lot of that work came out of our tri-state visit from last school year and the report there. We've also been working, and you'll see this common theme in literacy as well, we've been focusing on updating our intervention resources that we're providing to our interventionists in math and literacy. And so we've added a couple additional specific resources to help with some of the individual needs that some of the data is showing us that we didn't currently have. We actually didn't have any evidence-based resources in our intervention system. A lot of our staff were making up resources, and now we were able to actually bring in some evidence-based tools to help with intervention. So that's a great success for now. We've continued our work to provide professional development for all staff in mathematics, K through 12, grounded in the Building Thinking Classrooms research, which is really focused on students collaborating in the classroom, making their thinking more visible, getting kids out of their chairs, working on vertical whiteboards across around the room, and defronting some of that traditional environment where there's a teacher at the front of the room with a board and the kids are in rows and chairs in the desks, at the desk. So we're trying to transform what that math classroom looks like. And then finally at the high school, we're really looking at standards alignment and ensuring that our courses that we're offering are aligned to statutory requirements, one of which, for example, is the new graduation requirement around financial literacy, and also looking at that K-12 alignment in some of the other core areas like computer science and specifically math as well.
Tina, quick question
Yes,
for
sir.
you. Since I'm new to the process, so the 61% metric, so how did
Percentile?
we, yeah, how did we set that? How did we choose that percentile? And then how does this compare, if we know at all, to sort of the surrounding towns? Meaning, is it ambitious enough? Is it too ambitious? Sort of just a little bit of color on that would be great.
Yeah, we have this conversation as district leaders like all the time. And if you look at percentiles, and we worked a lot on this last year, right? If you look at a traditional bell curve and you go to the doctor and you look at, what's your height and weight in percentile compared to somebody at your age at this point in time, that's how they determine whether or not you're in the 90th percentile for height and weight, right? You're taller or heavier than 90% of the other people at this point in time based on your age and your weight. And so it's very similar. NWA uses that very similar idea. But what the bell curve says is that a student, if they are in the 50th percentile, then they're on grade level. They're on target to be successful. They're good. So there's a balance, right? There's that understanding. And majority of districts are typically using like the 50th to the 55th percentile, right? In Weston, when we look at some of our trend data over the years, typically our students score higher than that, right? In addition, when we look at the linking studies that NWA provides, they do provide individual grade levels, percentile numbers that help districts recognize that if a student scores in the spring at this percentile, then they should meet this standardized assessment score on SAT or Smart or Balanced, or even ACT. They even give you projections for ACT as well. So we tried to figure out a balance between the fact that we have students on grade level, if they're doing great, if they're at the 50th percentile, as well as some of the linking studies that have really showed more of a higher percentile than 50th. So when we made a decision last year, we chose the 61st percentile because we were trying to say, look, we typically score higher than the 50th percentile, and we know that if they meet the 61st percentile, then they meet the benchmark on SAT or on Smart or Balanced. Every year, we reflect on our data and we reevaluate and revisit some of those numbers.
Okay, so this is an annual sort of reassessment on your part. And it sounds like this is higher than surrounding towns. Is that correct?
Most districts use the 50th percentile because you're on grade level, you're in the middle of that bell curve, you're on grade level, you're doing well. But when we looked at our data and we look at the linking studies, we felt comfortable that if we reached for the 61st percentile, then we would get enough information to know that we've got students that are meeting the Smart or Balanced number of a 3, or the SAT and the SAT scores when they get to 11th grade. And aggressive yet achievable, I guess is the right way to say it.
So in our DIRG, basically, compared to others in our DIRG, we are higher.
Most of the other districts in DIRG A are always looking higher than the 50th percentile.
Okay.
In the surrounding
Okay, so
towns, sometimes they use the 50th or the 55th percentile.
Okay, two last things. So
Yep.
you answered one of my questions in terms of how predictive this is and what we can use it for sort of going forward.
Yeah.
The other question, I guess, is since you have individual student data, are we tracking that, sort of following the trend through their journey from, let's say, K to 9 in Weston? And then does that give us an ability to, if they continually fall short, to create or plan out additional interventions to potentially help them along the way?
Yeah, it's great. And it's exactly what we were talking about when it comes to intervention resources and a multi-tiered system of support. Because we can use formative data to be proactive versus reactive, we are regularly identifying students after each administration of this assessment to intervene and respond accordingly, whether it's in ELA or math. And it's very fluid, right? We hope that students don't need intervention support for a long period of time, but we're able to look at those metrics however long we need them for the whole time that they're in Weston and for the amount of time that we're using the formative assessment. Yeah. Okay.
Can I just ask one question? Mm-hmm. If we are aiming for 61%.
61st percentile.
Percentile, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. And the median is 50%.
50th percentile.
Strictly just testing you
Yep.
and you. Why aren't we highlighting it with two columns, the 50th percentile and our stretch goal or our achievement? Because on the surface, when I first looked at this, I'm like, this doesn't look that great. And then I looked at the numbers a little bit more and where we're aiming for. But I think it would do us a service to the community if we had that column in there, where if 50 percentile is a baseline, that should be in there because it would highlight where we are compared to other DIRG A schools.
And again, I repeat that we reevaluate and have this conversation constantly, and I think the more charts we have, there's a balance between making sure there's a clear understanding. No, I know, because we go back and forth and determine whether or not, which percentile do we really want to emphasize, knowing that we are really reaching higher than the average bell curve, right? And so the charts can get quite big, And sometimes if you add too many things, they become convoluted, especially with the number of goals. You've seen our goals on our school and our district improvement plans. So moving into next year, we can definitely take that into consideration to determine what that percentile is and how we want to look at the different achievement values.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think you need something that's constant, so that whether you look at the data from 2020 or 2025, something is constant. And so if the 61 percentile is something that could move to 60 or 59 or 65, then year over year it's really hard to do a comparison. But if we have something that was constant, which is the baseline, so I think just it would help as we really look at improvement to be able to go back to a data point and say, yeah, every year we have this one constant column.
Absolutely. Reducing the variables is definitely what we constantly come back to. 61st percentile is what we used last year as well. That hasn't changed yet. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, though. It's like, well, where are we at 50? Because if we had put just the 50 results up there, you'd be like, wow, terrific. And we don't want to certainly have people leave thinking, you know, they don't understand the story behind the determination to move things forward.
And the other
So I
piece,
hear what
too,
you're
is
saying.
our summative assessments are what our spring goals are connected to, which is Smarter Balanced and SAT. Those are the summative assessments. And so we're trying to use this tool as a predictor of. And so we're trying to balance where that sweet spot is for the percentile is to help us make a good prediction for Smarter Balanced and for SAT. Yep.
I guess I agree that it would be great to have a constant, right? So maybe we're doing two columns. One is a constant and one is the Weston bar, right? Because there's nothing wrong with Weston. We're a top performing district. There's nothing wrong with us having a higher bar than 50th percentile. As a matter of fact, I think we should 100% have a higher bar than the 50th percentile. But for comparison basis, year over year, it would help if we had one column that had, here's the 50th percentile, here's how Weston performed on the 50th percentile last year, the year before, and we can just see that we are either maintaining or progressing or going backwards if we have that constant. I agree with David on that one, but I think it's really important that we do not shoot towards that constant as our goal, but we maintain a higher level of expectation from our students because we've got high-performing students in a high-performing district, and I think it's really important that when we have folks who are spending their lovely Monday evenings here with us, that we make sure that they are very aware of the fact that we are holding ourselves to a higher bar. So that's just, something we need to make clear.
Sure, we understand. And remember, though, the end goal is the Smarter Balance. The NWEA and the percentiles, we use that to inform the instruction. To Michael's point, the interventions, who's a red flag, how can we tweak this, and all of that. But the end goal really is the Smarter Balance. But I hear what you're saying.
And we haven't lost any of that data. So we can go back and we have a sliding scale with Tableau and the different visualizations that we have available to us. So we can maintain some of those constants. Dan, how many years have we had Tableau in Weston? You know better than me. Right, so we could go back even further than that if we wanted to maintain some of that, achievement or growth over time. Okay? All right, let's move on to reading. The next section is focusing on our first administration of our DIBELS 8 assessment. This is one of the state-approved assessments that we adopted this school year that is connected to our American Reading Company and core literacy program in the district. This is an overall snapshot again of achievement on the left-hand side and then growth on the right-hand side. We did administer kindergarten, first grade, and second grade in the fall and the winter. So in the fall, 72% of our students in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade were at or above the benchmark. And then in the winter, that same group of students was at 80%. So that's a nice improvement of achievement between those two snapshots. And then on the right-hand side, we looked at growth. So how many students from the fall to the winter, based on the DIBELS 8 assessment, grew based on their growth targets, which is nice, right? NWA and Dibbles 8 both give growth targets, which is really nice, even though they're different assessments. So we had 79% of the students in grades K1 and 2 that met or exceeded their growth targets from fall to winter. Okay, moving into grades 3 through 9. Now we switch assessments because Dibbles 8 is required, one of the required assessments. NWA is not at this point or when we adopted it. And so grades 3 through 9, we again look at achievement from the fall group of students in grades 3 through 9, and then what was the achievement in the winter. And on the right-hand side, we look at growth. So again, what percentage of students met their growth targets from the fall to winter in grades 3 through 9. All right, so we drill down a little bit more specifically. I want to remind you that K1 and 2 has a different assessment. The Dibbles 8 literacy assessment provides a composite score, so an overall number, and then they break down that number into different areas focused on the science of reading and the different pillars of reading instruction, phonemic awareness, letter naming sounds, word recognition. And so we look again at the achievement overall of those different areas of reading instruction and achievement in the fall and the winter. And then we looked at how much growth they made from the fall to the winter. We've saw some really great gains in the kindergarten. Just a shout out to all of our kindergarten teachers and students there. We had a really high percentage of students that were below the benchmark in the fall based on specific areas of decoding skills and word recognition. And when they went from the winter, we only had about 30-something% of our students that did not meet the benchmark in those two areas. So we're seeing a lot of shift in growth in those different areas of literacy instruction from the fall to winter.
Tina, can I interject for a second on that?
Sure.
Are you mapping that to the implementing of the new reading curriculum, or am I making a big jump with that?
Not a big jump. Again, they're different assessments. The curriculum-based assessments, they're different than these, but they all have the same types of skill areas in order to develop really strong readers. So decoding skills and letter sounds and recognition and word recognition, fluency is another piece of it. So while they're different assessments, they still are measuring different pieces. The nice thing about our core reading program is that the curriculum-based assessment actually builds in, they're called power goals, and they create individualized plans for each student based on what their areas of weakness are so that teachers can individualize the instruction in the classroom. So teachers have been working really hard to understand how to create those power goals with kids, and they're working in small groups, and we've seen some really great gains in K1 and 2.
So these numbers, K1 through 2, this is basically year one of implementing
Yep.
the new reading curriculum.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So then, I mean, what pops off this slide, of course, is that things look to be trending in a very, very good direction, K through 2, and then, not stark at all, but more stagnating 3 through 5. So again, I'm jumping here a little bit, but I'm assuming the hope would be, as we begin to roll out more of a science-based approach to reading, that we might see that same kind of improvement in 3 through 5 too. Is that
I'm curious to see what next year will look like,
Yeah.
for sure. These are different assessments, right? When you get to third grade and beyond, now we switch to NWA. The goal areas do measure different components, right? Informational text and vocabulary, so they're different aspects of the assessment for sure. And one thing to just make note of, right, if we look at the individual grade level goals, although they may seem different comparatively to K through 2, our goal for grade 3 was 80%, and we're at 72, so we're not far off, and we still have some more instruction and learning to do. Same thing with grade 4, our goal was 80% based on last year. And in 5th grade, we were at 87 for the end of this school year. So we're getting close and we're moving in the right direction. One of the areas that we know we want to really drill down a little bit more specifically is at the individual student level and looking at growth, right? So even though a student may grow, the question is, did they grow enough, right? Because that column is basically you hit it or you didn't hit it. Did you meet the 10 points or did you not meet the 10 points? So if I drill down specifically in one of the areas, you know, we had like 19 students that missed their growth target by 3 points. So if you transition and look at that percentage, it increases significantly on those 19 students. So that's where we're going to focus for the next half of the year, making sure that we can drill down individually and look at how much growth they made and what we can do to accelerate that growth from now until the end of the school year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can you just clarify for me?
Mm-hmm.
When we say growth, I understand the term growth on the surface.
Yeah.
Better than before. So are we actually looking at growth where students from because we don't have any historical data, which I think is also strange. Like, how do I know if the growth for this year, what is measured off from last year?
So it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
So when you transition to the next grade level, right, you get a new assessment. So in the fall, which is what we're showing here, you retest based on the NWA, and you get a new achievement level, and you get a new growth rate. So that's where you are at this point in time. You've learned more, you get a new assessment, and you get a new baseline for your growth. So you get that in the fall, you get a new number, and then the number shows you what your typical growth should be from fall to winter, and then you reassess again, and you you measure up again, and you get a new growth target from winter to spring.
So these growth targets are singularly over the course of one academic year for the students.
3 times every single year as they go from kindergarten all the way up to 9th grade. And so that's why formative assessment is so powerful, because it's timely, it's responsive, and we are really unpacking it as soon as we receive that information and making adjustments so that the next time we administer the assessment, we know that they've met their growth target or not, and we change the plan for them potentially, and we make sure that they're accelerating and going to that next level of growth.
So how do you know then a student as an individual, as they matriculate through the district, is actually growing academically? That might mean something. If every year we're resetting. I understand now what you're saying, that you're looking at points in time over the course of their 3rd grade, their 4th grade, their 5th grade. But how do we know that student as an individual, as they move through from pre-kindergarten to 12th grade, they are growing academically from a challenging perspective? Not that they're just doing better, but that they're growing academically year over year.
At each benchmark, there are benchmarks for grade level and for achievement. So every time a student moves up, there's a new expectation on what that number should be, so we can compare it to where they should be growing and at what rate.
Okay.
Yeah. We have charts, and we monitor these, every student in the district at the school level. That's what our curriculum and instructional leaders do with our teachers, and we track them. We use our Tableau system to help us throughout the whole process, and then a lot of times we have internal spreadsheets, and we track them over time, and we monitor them. Yeah. Okay. So same thing for 6 through 9. We are looking at specific areas here to zoom in on. We know that last year, 6th grade was an area, again, as we transition into that grade for ELA, and this year as well. We do unpack the NWA scores and look at some of the informational text and vocabulary and drill into some of those achievement and growth areas as well. And so last year, just as a point of reference, we're pretty close in some of these targets for the end of the year. For example, 9th grade, the goal is they've already exceeded it. We wanted it to be 80% achievement for 9th graders, and they've exceeded it by 2% already. So really focusing on the growth, right? If we can focus on individual growth across all of these areas, which our curriculum and instructional leaders are doing with our teachers, we're creating individual plans for students, and we're tracking their growth over time and coming up with student action plans to ensure that they are, individual teachers are meeting with those students and meeting their needs. So this is some of the work that we're going to be doing in more detail, for the second half of the year.
Tina, quick question. I may have missed it. Is there a goal for the growth numbers when you're going through this? Obviously we all want to see 100% growth, right? Mm-hmm. But is there a goal that you're trying to hit here to ensure that, the student progress and achievement
Yes.
is meeting expectation?
Yes, so within our school and our district improvement plans,
Yeah.
we do have a goal, a percentage of students that we want to meet their growth targets by the end of the school year. Each student has their own number, but as a district and as a grade level, we have a percentage that we're looking towards.
So like, for example, here, Mike, the growth goal that we want to see by the end of the year for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is 56%. And that was determined by that cohort. That's the growth goal. Then there's an achievement goal on the smarter balance.
Right.
So the growth tells us, like, who could be struggling, and then the achievement will show at the end of the year, coupled with the growth of, kind of to David's point, okay, at the end of the year, where is this child at? But if you go into the individual school improvement plans, each school set growth targets per grade level.
And when
Except
are those
Hurlbut's
set?
a little
When are
different.
those set, Lisa?
Excuse me?
I was asking, when are those set? When are those growth targets established?
They were set in the beginning of the year.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And just want to remind you one more piece. Sometimes, you go to a glaring number that looks low, like let's say the 47%. When a student is at a really high achievement level, it becomes harder and harder to grow, right? If you're at 99 out of 100 points, and you're still really, really high, to get that 1 point sometimes is very difficult. So, for example, that 47% number, if you drill down, 9 students didn't meet their growth target. If 9 of them did, we would have been at 91%. So it's a huge difference when you're looking at some of that achievement versus growth. So just be mindful of that. And so, as Tracy mentioned before, she's going to take over and talk a little bit about our subgroup population for ELA as well.
So this slide represents our growth data for students with disabilities in English language arts. And I think Tina already explained the measurement tools that are being used at each grade level. The K2 data represents DIBELS. 3 through 9 represents our NWEA scores. And basically, I'm going to follow the same format as I did for math. I'll step you through our current growth rates and what our goal was for the school year. So in K2, 57% of our students met or exceeded their projected growth targets. Our goal for this year is 50%, so we're in a nice place there. In grades 3 through 5, 45% of our students met their growth projections from fall to winter. This data parallels the data that you saw on the previous slide for our population overall. It's below our goal of 75%. We're taking a very close look at the students in that cohort. Remember, we're talking about approximately 20 students per grade level, so a smaller number of students than referenced on the previous slide. In grades 6 through 8, 52% of our students met their projected growth target. Our goal for this year is 44%. So we are in a good place there. And in grade 9, 50% of our students met their projected growth target, and our goal for this year, based on previous year data, was 46%. So it's important to note that all of our students, or all of the grade level bands, met or exceeded goals in this area from fall to winter, with the exception of that grade 3 through 5 cohort. That's going to be an area of focus for us in the second half of the year. Tina spoke a bit about our introduction of a new reading curriculum, which I do think is driving some of that improvement in K2. We're also continuing to look at our intervention tools for both special education and MTSS, which we previously called SRBI. Those are our general education interventions. And our teachers are continuing to participate in professional development in the area of reading, I would say especially our special education teachers. It's also been important for both the English language arts and math performance that we have integrated goal setting around student growth in the development of teacher goals as well as the school level goals, and I think that's driving some of the progress we're seeing in this area as well. Tina, back over to you.
I just have one quick comment, actually. For someone who's looking at this for the first time, if we could have goals up there, either next to the numbers, or if we can highlight them in green or something, indicate whether or not we've achieved the goal or fallen short, I think that would be super helpful, because I look at the numbers and I'm not sure if they're good or bad until I get the explanation. So,
Yeah, and we'll follow up and do a little bit more extensive at the spring, right? Because this is just a midpoint progress check. But good point. Sometimes we are mindful of the amount of text dense aspects that some of these slides can create as we go out the year. So Tracy,
I add one more piece on that, which is maybe I missed it. When are the goals set, and are they shared with the Board of Ed and the community?
Yep.
I did miss it.
It's okay. We set them in August
Remember the
because we do
conversation? I
wait.
remember them okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. And then we have a presentation that we always do in the larger group, just like this, to the whole community.
Okay, I remember the conversation. I don't remember the numbers.
Yeah, no, the numbers are listed in each school improvement plan, and to Michael's point, and that's what I was doing. I go back all the time and I check, okay, what's the district, what's the individual number? So in parentheses, for example, when you look in the individual, plan, like I'm looking at Patty's plan with 3, 4, and 5, you'll see in the parentheses like what the percentage was last year for the achievement. So if I'm hearing you correctly, that would be helpful to include in the chart, so then you know, like, well, this was kind of the target for the end of the year. This is how we're making growth towards that target. Like, all right, the target was 56. We're at 52. Looks good. That's what? Yeah, I understand.
So Tracy mentioned a couple of these action steps that we've been highlighting for the first half of the year. What she mentioned in special education translates into also what we support all of our classroom teachers around. So we've been engaged in the American Reading Company training sessions. It's job-embedded professional development, which has been an asset for us this year. We've been looking at our intervention tools at the early literacy grades, and also our foundational interventions that we have for all students, one of which is called Hegarty, that really focuses on all 4 areas of phonological and phonemic awareness. You just went through some of the new assessment components. There's a ton of different reports and ways to access data and how to unpack the data. So we've been taking some time to really help support teachers around how to analyze and interpret those numbers. Our curriculum and instruction leaders throughout the district have been doing an enormous amount of work with our individual teachers at the grade level and at the content area to help with data team protocols and structures and really help them unpack the data, but then also how do we translate that data into something actionable in the classroom? If the numbers are telling me this, now what does that mean for me as a classroom teacher with small groups and my strategies in the classroom? It becomes very individualized, and our curriculum instruction leaders have been a real asset to our teachers and informing them, and some of the feedback from the teachers have been, this has been so helpful to really understand how to connect the strategies that I do in the classroom with the data that I'm seeing on the platform. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, right? And then, as Tracy mentioned, we are using all of this information in our multi-tiered system of support specifically for ELA and math. That is still underway, and we're always looking at new tools to help meet the needs of the students based on the data that we get. I feel like it's an ongoing conversation because there's always new resources and there's new learning that we always are doing every year. So we're going to shift now into science. It's our last area of academic excellence section. This is now going to change your mindset all in itself because science is completely different than ELA and mathematics. We have a completely different assessment system at the state level, and we have a different assessment tool that we use for science. We started this last year, and this year we have a new curriculum instruction leader, and she's really been taking the work, rolling up our sleeves and really focusing on supporting our teachers in all grades, but specifically using a new tool that we have called Inner Orbit. We piloted this last year, we explored it a little bit, but this year we're actually implementing it on a more granular level at the middle and high school level. Because our assessment for next generation science standards only is administered in grades 5 8, and 11. There's no growth goals that we can look at over time on the state level, because the state gives us some guidance, but there is no guidance from the state around the science aspect. And so we really are left to our own devices to make our own system and structure in the area of science. So this year we're really excited. I'm going to show you some snapshots. I will tell you that this is teacher level reports. So, bear with me because it can look quite cumbersome if you're not used to seeing some of the reports here. So just to give you background, the science standards are three-dimensional, which means there's 3 different layers of standards for teachers. Bernie, you can help me here on any point. Okay, so we have disciplinary core ideas. Those are the core content areas across physical science and life science and earth and space science. Then we have the science and engineering practices. So how are the students acting like scientists with the content area standards? And then last, what are the cross-cutting concepts? That's what the CCC standards are. So how are the students able to look for patterns and trends and use some of the strategies in the classroom where they're acting like scientists in the different units of study? So, boof, here we go, right? Okay, so you'll see this is a snapshot of the high school courses that have been administering these assessments. So biology, chemistry, and physics. We've been doing this in some of the core areas. So from a teacher perspective, you'll see there's 3 tabs. You see them across the top. One says disciplinary core ideas, one says science and engineering practices, and one says cross-cutting concepts. Right? So from a teacher perspective, we're looking at all 3 layers of standards using this assessment. It's the first time we've used this in the district like this. So we're helping, the curriculum instruction leaders helping to unpack some of these numbers. This is an example of a fall administration and then a winter administration. So the top row is the winter assessment points around the physical science standards, around the life science standards, and you can even see some of the earth science standards. Not every standard is assessed in the fall, and then you'll see in the winter, not every standard is assessed. So if you look for the colors from the top to the bottom, that's where I started, right? I look for a color to pop up, and then I look to see what does the number look like from the fall to the winter. So for example, let's take the first column, Physical Science Standard 1. In the fall, 43% of the students met proficiency. And the benchmark, as you can see on the bottom, is if you hit a 40%, you're in the yellow. You only get to move to green when you're at 60, right? So, oh look, in the winter, same standards, they were assessed again, and what number did our students achieve? Around that physical science standards, they got to 63. So I just went straight down. You see how I did that? Okay, so these are what the teachers do, right? We unpack all the different standards. We look at the units that we're teaching. We're looking to see which standards we measured, and we're looking to see growth. You can see that overall, the standards that were assessed, our students improved. There are some standards that were not assessed in the winter. They should come back. By the end of the year, all of these standards should be measured, right? And I think Lisa mentioned this before, right? We use these formative assessment tools to help us unpack the curriculum, look at the different experiences in the classroom, and so similar here, right? Not every standard is assessed in the winter. Okay, so just real briefly, this is what a science and engineering practices chart will look like. I gave you a sample from middle school. All of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are now engaging in these assessments, and so you'll see that not every standard was assessed in the fall and the winter around the science and engineering practices, but we do have some data to look at growth over time, which is really exciting. We didn't have any of this data last year, so now we have a so-called standardized measure that we can use across multiple grade levels. And have some common conversations around standards. And then finally, the last one is the cross-cutting concepts. All right, So maybe one of those areas that we might want to focus on for Weston High School for the classes that took this assessment is the scale, proportion, and quantity cross-cutting concept, because we assessed it in the fall at 46%, and then we assessed it again in the winter, and we declined a little bit. So that might be something that we might want to look at. What examples did we use? What simulations did we use? And so on and so forth. Okay.
If I can just add on that one, kind of to Michael's point of like, well, what was the number? Last year, 86% of our students, no, 83% of our students, sorry, met or exceeded achievement on the science NGSS. That was really top performance without any of this drilling down, because we didn't even have this pilot program to do. So we set our goal for 86%. And we're really excited about the level now of detail that we can get into with looking at these different standards and how our students are performing. Because as Dr. Henkel said, we didn't have this tool. So this is just sort of an update on the tool towards a trajectory of increased excellence in science.
All right, so that concludes our academic section. Now we're going to transition into our second section on district culture and climate, and Lisa's going to start us off.
So as we all know that this is really important, the social emotional learning piece. We know from all of our information, both qualitative and quantitative, that it's important that our students have those connections, that they feel a sense of belonging. That's what the Weston Public Schools are known for. Tradition never graduates. We know our students. We want them to be connected. We want them to feel valued, honored, and a sense of belonging. And so I'm going to ask each school, ready guys, to kind of summarize, starting with Hurlbut, what are some of the highlights of the action steps that we achieved over the course of the first half of the year? Take it away, Laura. Hurlbut.
All right, thank you, Lisa. At Hurlbut, as part of our efforts to improve our culture and climate at our school, is a focus on attendance. We want our students in school as much as possible so that they can learn and grow. So we have increased communication to individual families. We're reaching out, more outreach to families, as well as general communication about the importance of attendance and parameters around attendance absences. We also use the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence for our social emotional learning curriculum. We have been reviewing the new online resources. There really is a wealth of family resources available in there, as well as lessons for the teachers to use. So for January, February, and March, we are focusing on vocabulary lessons with some family resources, letters going home to families so that they can have a general idea of what we're doing in school and also use some of those words at home. We will then in the spring be looking to do another round of those lessons. Our PBIS program, which is very strongly embedded in our school and most of our families know is built around our Be Safe, Kind, and Responsible motto. We have integrated into our assemblies some additional social emotional learning lessons. Most recently at one of our assemblies, we kicked off a meta moment activity where buddy classes got together to learn additional strategies for regulating their emotions. And my personal favorite, our affirmation station we kicked off this year. We have in our main hallway a bulletin board called our affirmation station. And December, during morning announcements, we started every day with a positive affirmation, and the students absolutely loved it. So some examples of what we started our day with were saying together, I am capable, I am kind, I can do hard things. And we did that for an entire month. The affirmation station bulletin board stays up all year. And it's really heartwarming to see our students walk by it. Part of the bulletin board has mirrors for them so they can see themselves at different heights, so all of our children can access it. And throughout the day, they just stop as they're making their way throughout the school. They stop at the station independently, and I'll see them standing there looking in the mirror and saying, I'm a great student. So it's been a really nice addition to the school. And now at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Patty Falber, principal of the intermediate school.
Great. Thank you, Laura. We have been doing a lot. School climate and culture, building community and positive school climate is really
paramount to what we do. So just some of the things that we've been working on this year. We take, whenever we can during our professional development time or our faculty meetings, we work a lot on focusing on Ruler and PBIS. Ruler is our program out of Yale, and it really is the foundation for our social emotional curriculum and for helping our students learn to recognize and regulate their emotions. So we spend a lot of time as a community talking about the core components of it and talking about best practices, what's happening in different classrooms, sharing what works well and what the teachers have done over the past 4 months or so in school. We'll continue to do that throughout the year. It just weaves in part of our faculty meeting. Our next initiative is really an important one to us. It's called Being Kind. Over the last couple of years, we really have been focusing a lot on gratitude and kindness. And thanks to our very generous PTO and the Kiwanis, we got a book vending machine this year. So that has really become the foundation for our Being Kind initiative, where our teachers and staff members are looking at catching students being kind. And when they catch them, they get a coin. And that coin can then be used to choose a book of their choosing out of the vending machine. And it's been really successful. We have given out over 200 coins already this year. And our goal is that every single student gets at least one coin this year. And maybe even a staff member. And going on with that theme of kindness, so we have monthly assemblies, our PBIS assemblies, that focus on either kindness or on pride, which is our motto, and to help along with that, we brought Brian Williams, who's also known as a kindness ninja. He came to our school a couple of years ago and really did 2 amazing assemblies, really talking about the importance of kindness and the importance of how you can change the world. And he gave us a goal of doing 15,000 acts of kindness, of which, when you do the math, it really isn't all that many. And so our kids are being challenged to do that and keeping track of it. And this month actually is Kindness Month, and we have a week-long Kindness Week, actually this week, of which there's lots of different Spirit Weeks activities to do to embrace kindness and to show kindness. In October, I believe, we did the PTO presentation on social and emotional learning. Laura really spearheaded that, but really starting from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade and talking about how you can support the learning that we're doing at school, and really talking about what Ruler is, what it looks like in the classroom, and how we help students. So that was a really great presentation. And then we're always looking at ways to promote positive school climate. So we collect paws because Webster the wolf is our mascot. And so when a class shows an aspect of pride, they get awarded a paw. So this Friday we actually are celebrating 75 paws with a school-wide hot cocoa bar and pajama day. So whatever we can do to sort of have some fun and increase our school climate and spirit, we do. And that's just some of the things that we do. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Bill, middle school principal.
Thank you, Patty. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the highlights that's going on at the middle school to really build and strengthen the positive school climate at the middle school. I think I've already spoken about the fact that we have rebranded our advisory period. We now call it Connect, and it really focuses on building relationships among students, between students and staff, really making connections here at school and in the community. We've actually been more consistent this year with our Connect periods. They happen twice a month, and just some examples, there's some traditional team building activities that we've done over the years. We've done things like door decorating, but there's been additional opportunities for students to come together and be creative and create sculptures out of a limited amount of materials. We've also just recently done a Valentine's Day activity where students in their Connect classes were assigned either a member of the food services staff or a bus driver or a support staff to write a Valentine's Day card, just showing our appreciation, showing them some love for Valentine's Day. In addition, we are trying to increase opportunities to help parents feel more connected. I think especially ever since COVID, a lot of our meetings had become virtual. So I know the PTO is trying to do more in-person meetings in the building. Our school counselors have also, actually it started off as just one idea for one parent coffee, and it was received so well that they have shifted into having monthly coffees for parents. And they've talked about topics such as the book Never Enough, most of these issues are just around what are the challenges of raising teenagers today, and some of the comments about cell phones is one that's coming up again and again. Their March coffee is going to be focused on raising teenagers in the digital age. So that's been something that we've really made an effort to do in terms of opportunities to bring parents into the building. Another new initiative this year, and it was born out of necessity, our robotics team at the middle school and the high school has been so successful that Rebecca Kaplan needed some support. So we have over 16 parents helping out with our robotics team, taking turns. And it's just been a huge boost and a really positive thing for parents to be able to come in and help out with that co-curricular activity. We've also continued some of our traditional things. We do a SOAR drawing. Safety, Ownership, Attitude, and Respect is our PBIS program here. We do monthly drawings for students who have received SOAR cards. We have monthly spotlight students where the teachers nominate students on their team and recognize them for really being good citizens and doing the right thing. It's not simply being the best and brightest student. It goes beyond that and really shows the attributes of character that we're trying to foster here at the middle school. So we've had 67 spotlight students, and we've also encouraged teachers to reach out, again, to make connections. And in an age where we feel like things may be too digital, we actually send postcards in the mail, and over 75 positive postcards have been sent out by staff members to students so far this year, and we're going to keep that initiative going as well. So that's some of the highlights for the middle school, and now I will turn it over to Megan Canetta to talk about the high school.
Thanks, Dan. It's nice that I get to go last because as I'm sitting here as a high school principal, I'm like, okay, can I do a shout out to the robotics team now? Because all 4 of our high school teams made it to the regionals, which I think is really cool. So thanks to all the parent volunteers. The other thing I want to point out is what I hear as I tend to go last is the connections, and in the end, kids are just kids. So as Laura's talking about her affirmation station, which I didn't even know was at Hurlbut, we have something similar at the high school. So it just really kind of brings everything together and how much those things are so meaningful to kids. When you walk into our library, Mrs. Sweezy and Mrs. Nice have a mirror with all the positive affirmations that we're really trying to kind of implant in kids' heads so they can say, be kind to each other. Talk to yourself as you would talk to your best friend. So we're doing a lot of that work in the high school to influence a positive school climate. It's all related to our action steps in our high school improvement plan. One of those was to develop a clearly articulate, well, I'll start with PACT. PACT, as I've said before, is our advisory program. It stands for Positively Achieving Community Together. And quite frankly, our PACT is packed. And so one of our goals in our improvement plan was to really come up with a curriculum and make sure that we are really embedding the goals of our counseling department and as well as our link crew, which is our new 8th to 9th grade transition program. So to date this year, we have held 25 PACT classes. They happen every Wednesday, and part of that is a lot of school spirit. We have a pep rally coming up on Wednesday. We have our Super Bowl event. We've done it before this year to raise funds and food for the person-to-person food pantry. PACT is also a time that our link leaders, who are upperclassmen, will go down into our ninth grade PACT rooms and do activities with them where they're leading those activities and building those connections with our ninth graders. So the ninth graders also see them as leaders and mentors in our building, and that started way back in the fall with our ninth grade orientation. And there are various activities that we do as well: time management, organization. I'll skip down to parent and student programming. One of the things that we've also focused on is we have monthly school climate meetings where parents and students and teachers and administrators sit on that committee. One of the things that came out of that committee was a conversation about midterms. So that committee and those parents and students and our counselors asked some questions about midterms, and we said, let's get some information about it. And so we worked on a survey and administered that during PACT to our students who had just taken midterms. So we're going to begin to analyze that data as well. We've also had some parent and student programming throughout the year where I had talked earlier about Challenge Success. In December, we held a workshop about the well-balanced student. It was a wonderful workshop. Sharon, I know you were there. And it was, we had about 25 members of the community attend. And I think that there was so much positive feedback that I begged folks to please invite 10 friends to the next one. And the good news is we just had our second workshop for parents, and we had over 200 in attendance. And we really had a great turnout from our 8th grade families. So we're really excited about welcoming them to the high school, and they got a real flavor of our priorities and our priorities of healthy students, and this idea that you can want to achieve greatly and do it in a balanced way, and there's a right place and a right time for everybody. So we're really working on the mission of that. We also continue to partner in the community with community groups. We work with ADAP. We know there's a community coalition meeting, and we work with Health and Human Services in town and on our programming to support students as well. And that coincides with the Rising Freshman Forum that will come up as well. And then in addition, we have revised and enhanced our support for all students. So you heard Tina mention the multi-tier system of supports. We've really strengthened that, looking at how we can use the teachers in our math lab and our writing center to help support our students who we identify need additional support and help and interventions, Michael, to your point. So really looking at our data, working with our CILs and our teachers, and we've also created a new request for assistance form. It's a Google form, so when a teacher's kind of saying, there's kind of something going on here, I'm not really sure, they can fill out that request for assistance form. It goes to the counselors. That initiates like a team meeting. Parents are involved too, that we can really kind of circle the wagons and create that system of support to help our students and get them on track. So lots of good work.
Thank you, Megan. We're going to transition to the section 3, which is on information literacy and technology, and Dan DeVito, Director DeVito, is going to talk us through some of these progress measures.
All right, thank you, Tina. So our goal this year, we streamlined our goals, and our major goal is to prepare students to be responsible digital citizens in a global community, and that's by providing a future-ready, technology-oriented learning environment. So myself and the media specialists have been hard at work, both individually and together, as well as with their respective schools, on how to get digital citizenship lessons in there. And the major piece of that is it doesn't exist in a bubble by itself. It has to be integrated into the classroom and baked into lessons with the classroom teachers. So the media specialists this year have really been focusing their efforts on pushing into the classrooms to provide lessons for the students. So I just wanted to give some examples of what some of the media specialists are doing. So for instance, they're pushing into 4th grade social studies classes, and they're going over the ethical use of digital sources and content, or they're pushing into 5th grade ELA on media literacy and website evaluation. In the future, they're going to be moving into 3rd grade ELA classes on the ethical use of digital content, and that's going to be planned in April. At the middle school, so at that point, right, 6th grade is when digital citizenship, the concept really ramps up, and it's also ever changing. Every single year, digital citizenship kind of fluctuates and evolves. 6th grade is where they're beyond the basics. Now they're going into things that didn't exist 14 months ago, like AI, What's the responsible use of AI? What is it? How can we use it in the district? What don't they use it for? So the major piece was to gauge the students' understanding. So we provided an online survey for the students to assess their understanding of digital citizenship, and for them to explain to us what is their understanding of appropriate online behavior. And at that point, we've now developed a program that, starting in February, they're going to be pushing into 6th grade students, going over 4 separate lessons, chatting with online safety, cyberbullying, 2 big ones I personally feel, disinformation and AI. And this is going to be an ever-building thing. Based on the feedback, we'll continue to build. Over at the high school, media specialist, Ms. Sweezy, has really been pushed in grades 9 through 12 on screen time awareness. I feel that's a huge topic. Obviously, with the public comment, screen time awareness is massive, and it's only going to get bigger. So how do we work with the students on that from a healthy perspective? And then this coming semester, they're going to be working on AI and plagiarism, because we don't want AI and plagiarism to go hand in hand. So we need to discuss that with the students on how they can properly understand that. They're also been pushing into the English and social studies over journal research, right? Again, and this goes into website and publication evaluation. What is a valid source? What is not a valid source? You can't just find a rando website and put it in your paper. So to have the students understand what's valid versus what is not valid. And as we've seen in the curriculum meetings, the media specialists have been going over what they've been doing. And so far we have done presentations for Hurlbut and the intermediate school, and we have the middle school and the high school planned in the future. And with that, I'll pass it off to the man to my left, Mr. Paul Rasmussen.
Thank you, Dan. Really, our goal really out of the human resources is we really want to support all teachers as they come into our system, and also when they enter our system, especially during that first year, because ultimately if the teachers can be supported, then it's most likely going to be the students are going to be successful in their classroom. So we really kind of looked at it kind of 2 ways. One, looking at our onboarding process, and also then going into the teacher orientation, which we did in the summer, which really focused on kind of building the family and the support system around to be successful to start school. And then also once the school started, kind of the various topics that really needed for the teachers to be successful, so they kind of kick off within the school year. I've done a mid-year survey, but also not just on the survey, but also going out and talking to teachers. They've been very positive in terms of the support they received throughout the year, not only with the various workshops, but also from the community of teachers themselves in the schools. And especially giving a shout out to the SILs and the coaches. They said the support they've received has been amazing. And from that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Director Rios, who's going to be talking about security.
Thank you, Paul. Am I on? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I want to talk briefly about safety and security. Our number one goal is really that the community experiences a safe learning and working environment for all our students and staff and our visitors. So just wanted to go over some of our district highlights. I really feel good about our team that's in place, our security specialists working across the district, including our new floater position. We have 2 SROs that work in the middle and high school individually. We have a mile of safety officer that's up and down our campus throughout the day. We've hardened some of our schools through window film, door replacement. That was part of the special appropriation monies approved in 2023. And then also we've had, most recently we had an executive session where we discussed at length various security measures. Moving ahead to our capital budget request, and again trying to highlight some of our district needs going forward for 2025, looking at camera licensing, camera replacements, our server upgrades. Again, this is a multi-year approach, a phase-in approach, really, which is critical to the district. Also looking at our radio communications systems and upgrades, and also playground enhancements at WIS and Hurlbut. We also, as many remember, we discussed the additional mile of safety officer at our last meeting regarding the armed Weston police officer who would be added to cover the school grounds, specifically at WIS and at Hess. So finally, just wrap it up with detect, delay, and respond. Those are the district approach. We want to obviously detect things as far out as we can, and we do that by means of cameras. We do that by means of single point entry at all of our buildings, lighting, delay. Again, single point entry. We want to delay intruders from coming into our school. We screen all our visitors. We have a very thorough visitor management system, which is called Raptor, which many of you are aware of. And then we want to be able to respond to security matters in a timely manner. So that goes through district training, tabletop exercises, and just being prepared at a moment's notice, situational awareness. That is really important for us on a day-to-day basis. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Phil Cross.
Thank you, Joe. So as everyone knows, the district continues to be focused on sustainability. Just want to highlight a few initiatives or programs that we're working on right now. As of January, I'm pleased to announce that the middle school will join the high school in the cafeteria composting program. Our plan is to expand this program to the WIS this spring. Also proud to announce that the WIS has earned what's considered to be the ACORN status, and this was earned by committing to the CT Green Leaf School program. And what this is really is just a commitment that the WIS is a willingness to evaluate progress towards environmental sustainability goals. These goals include recycling, energy efficient practices, enhancing idle-free zones, and planting of pollinator pathways. And with that, I will turn this over to Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. And this is our last section, Section 7, and it's about the future planning and the Educational Optimization Committee, of which Mr. Gordon is the chair. And so we continue our work with the future planning. Some of the highlights that you heard about was we took a team to the Ed Spaces Conference. Mr. Doak, Ms. Edwards, Mr. Cross, and I attended the conference. And I have to say we learned a great deal about how to look at educational design and how to look at educational design and how it can impact instructional pedagogy. And some of the things that we learned about, quite frankly, are things that we can do right now in just re-envisioning current space, existing space, and furniture, which I think is really exciting. There's an upcoming Green Schools Conference in New Mexico that I believe, Mr. Gordon, you're going to attend? Yes, right? Then there are free workshops on the IDEO offering free workshop on facilities, adopting that kind of necessary mindset for purposeful campus building and academic design. There's a Healthy Building National Pilot with the DOE that we're looking to pursue. And finally, we have revisited with Tecton their original suggestions on the middle school. And we will be sharing those thoughts at the next EOC meeting, which the date escapes me, but it's coming up shortly. Some more to follow. And then, you know me, I always like to close with a slide because, so much of this is, you look at numbers, you look at data points, you look at check boxes. Yes, we moved to, we're doing composting. But what's the story behind it? There's Tina Canetta separating her trash in the cafeteria, the PTO partnership passing out the midterm goodie bags that the kids were so happy about. The intermediate school, that was the dedication of the book vending machine that I never saw so much excitement about. I don't know who is more excited, the Kiwanians, Mr. Usinoff, Ms. Gross that was there, Mr. Dallas Kelsey, then the kids. And then you look at, from the first day of school, there's Kelly Scott, who's a long-term kindergarten teacher in our building, to Lucas Walker doing experiments with science, and I think of NGSS, to the amazing music program that we have. There's Corin with her, my favorite instrument, the saxophone, Go Saxes. We had incredible theater performances already this year. Most recently, if you saw SpongeBob, it was quite something. I'm really proud of the work the kids do in community service. If anyone attended the Veterans Day celebration here at the middle school, the high school, you go into Hurlbut, you see the bulletin board, and then the boys holding that wreath at the national, the celebration at Town Hall, and the little brownies handing cards to the veterans. It was absolutely adorable. And let's not forget the girls swim and dive team, who I think that they are the most awarded state champions in state history. And of course, our beloved bus driver, Steve, who is celebrating School Bus Driver Day with his crazy hair. So these are the people and the faces behind kind of the plans and the charts and the numbers and everything else. And it speaks again to that theme I keep saying. I love the saying, tradition never graduates. I'm so proud to be superintendent of this amazing district with all these truly amazing students. And that's kind of a summary overall of our work. More to follow.
I just want to jump in quickly. I want to go back to Joe's presentation. I'm not sure who to direct this to. What
Go ahead.
What are next steps in terms of our discussion and whether or not we're moving forward with the additional mile safety officers? I don't know if this is a question for you, Steve, or if this is for Lisa or Joe, but would love to understand sort of there's time is of the essence, and of course there's a budgetary process that's running around this. So would I love to understand sort of what the milestones are here going forward in order to discuss it then. I don't know, do we need to vote on it, Steve? I'm not sure what next steps are.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a recommendation from the board that this would be the next step. I think procedurally, if this is our recommendation, then the next determination is how do we pay for it. And there are two ways to pay for it. Either we assume it all in our budget, and the estimate is $225,000, give or take that. Yes.
The SRO was, but we budgeted $125,000 as a placeholder for potential SRO.
No, we didn't.
What was $125,000 that you said was?
I just put a plug number in there for this role.
But $125,000.
$100,000 to $125,000. That's right.
Right, and our mile safety officer today is it's not. The mile safety officer is an overtime position.
No.
If I can clarify, the school resource officer, the SRO, is a police officer, and the cost of his salary and benefits is through the Weston Police Department. The district responsibility for the SRO is in the training, for example, the NASRO, the National School Resource Officer Training Program. That's what we pay for. The mile of safety officer that we currently have in the budget is a 60-40 split, the one that we have, and it is a position that is filled by multiple police officers on a rotational basis, and it is a 60-40 split, correct, Mr. Cross, with the district assuming 60%, that is what is in the 2025 budget, that's what's in the current budget, and the 40% is the police department budget, correct? Yeah. And it comes out of overtime.
So just for clarification, so we're not looking at an SRO, right? That's been settled. What we're looking at now is a second mile safety officer. That second mile safety officer is an overtime position, so it has the flexibility that Chief Henyon wants. The cost for the existing mile safety officer to the district is $125,000. that doesn't.
Phil, if you can clarify the numbers of the current cost and then the cost moving forward, both the 60% cost or the 100% cost, if we needed to absorb the 100% cost of a second mile of safety. Phil?
So when we look at the budget, our budget assumes, as Lisa mentioned, it's a 60-40 split. If we were to assume the full cost for this mile of safety officer, or the officers who will rotate through that position, the ultimate cost, or the full cost, if up to the board, could be between $100,000 to $125,000. Currently, in our budget, we assume 60% of that cost.
Okay, but we did carry. That number seems crazy because it's a school. It's a 8-hour, 6-hour shift, paid overtime for at maximum 181 days of the year, right? So, without doing crazy math, I don't know what our overtime officers get, but if I rounded it to $60 an hour, well, I won't do the math for the moment, only because I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to. $125,000 seems high, but either which way, $125,000 at no cost sharing was what the placeholder was that you put in the budget. So is there any reason?
That was for the first mile of safety officer that's in the budget.
No, we added.
No.
We did not.
$125,000 as a placeholder for security, for a security person, whether it was a SRO or the second mile of safety. The budget for this coming year that we put forward was my understanding.
We did not include the number. That was.
This discussion came up. This discussion for the second mile of safety officer came up after the budget had been approved.
Right.
And in the budget,
we
there
didn't
is.
put it in the budget as a line item.
Right, because I remember asking specifically about the line item for the mile of safety officer, and it was a $100,000, and I was curious because it was a 6% increase, and I asked whether or not that was in line with what they were getting as far as the department was concerned, and that was a question that
So it
Phil
would be
answered.
an incremental number to our budget, whatever
Correct.
the ultimate number is and whatever the ultimate split is. But let's assume for round numbers it's $100,000. So if there's a sense of the board that we want to do this, we have to, one, determine how we're going to pay for it. Ideally, we go back to the town and say we want to add this incremental mile safety officer. Our current arrangement is we'll pay 60% and you pay 40%, but we need to have that conversation with the selectmen, which we can do on Wednesday night.
We could do that, or as part of the discussion, if you recall, Chief Henyon was saying, we do currently work with a second mile of safety officer when the need arises. So not on a full-time basis, but when there's heightened security issues, basically if there's been a school shooting elsewhere, if there's any sort of threat that's detected
Yeah, the
at all.
question is who pays for that?
Well, we'd end up paying for it. We've done this in the past.
No, I'm
according-
asking Phil.
Sorry.
When the police department increases the police presence for whatever reason, is that a town expense or do we share that expense?
So it's two parts. The portion that relates to the mile of safety, that will be at the 60-40 split. However, but to what Sharon just mentioned, in addition to the mile of safety officer, as you may have noticed, at critical times or even at the start of the school year, you'll see an increased police officer present, and for those additional officers, that cost is paid by the town or by the police department.
Can we just quickly step back for one moment, just to clarify? It was my understanding, and Michael's conversation, because him and I did speak, and maybe we both are under a misunderstanding, that when we moved our budget forward, it was your word, Steve, that there was $125,000.
No, I said I would like to have included it. We never voted on that. So it's not in the budget.
I think there are a couple of things that need to happen. The first is, so this is the update on where we are with safety and security. And without getting too much into the executive session, there is a feeling that the campus is safe and secure. That if you wish to add another layer of that safety and security, it would be in terms of, and the police chief has been recommended a second mile of safety officer. That all happened after we moved forward with the budget. So currently in our 2025 budget, we have the staffing that is described in the slide, and the 60-40 split. So we have to decide, you have to decide, do you want to move forward with a second mile of safety officer? Do you support that? Approve that? And then we have to worry about the finance piece. The finance piece is, do we try to absorb it within our operating budget and see how we can do that? Do we see if the town will pay 40% for the position as they do with the first? To be perfectly blunt, it's either way, it's taxpayer money, correct? Whether it's the town or here, and that's kind of how we have to move forward. Our intention is to broach that with the town, and then I think that in the spring, it's going to have to come here to a vote or approval of this moving forward.
So if there's a sense of the board that this is something we should move forward, then we'll move it forward.
Moving it to a vote?
Well, you tell me, would you like to vote on it tonight? It's not on the,
Well,
Do
there's
we have to have it, can we have it tonight, or do we have to put it on an agenda for a future vote?
security was on the agenda, but I just did some very quick math, and tell me if I'm wrong, Phil. If a mile safety officer is overtime, and I don't know what our police make, but I'm gonna carry $60 an hour as a carrying number. It's more than that for overtime? Okay, well, at $60, I mean, are we talking north of $100 an hour for overtime?
So, are we arguing about the cost? So we have.
We're not arguing about anything.
No, when I say argue, it's.
Or getting clarification
right.
on.
So it's 60-40. It's a base salary plus payroll benefits, plus you have salaries, Social Security, Medicare, and you also have the pension component of that. So it's a full cost. It's not just in what their cost is or their hourly rate is.
Right. So but it's a fully loaded overtime rate.
That's correct.
Right. So even if we carried $80, so at $60 an hour, it's $86,000. So at $80 an hour, $100 an hour, we're still, we're under the 125, which I mistakenly thought was a number carried forward. So I think for the purposes of where do we go from here, since security was a piece of it, I think as a board, we should either take a vote, or if taking a vote tonight security is on the agenda, if it needs to be more clearly on an agenda, then we should put it on the next agenda for the second mile safety officer. But
okay, but then I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
And it's I think that's fine. But just recognize if we go to the town and the town says no, we don't want to assume 40%. We'll assume it. We're going to have to assume it in our budget, and it's a recurring item, so it's not.
It's a non-contractual recurring item. So
it's a non-contractual recurring
right.
item. That's right.
So just for example, we have $330,000 no, I understand in capital. So if we're spending $330,000 in capital, I think that the town, I think we did the math at one point, $100,000 of tax dollars equates to about $20 a taxpayer. So I don't see a lot of pushback on something that the board recommends, but if the town doesn't choose to move it forward, we have no contractual obligation at that point. We could vote, we can say as a board we want that position. We can then ask the town to fund it 60-40. If the town says no, and we can't fund it, we just don't do it.
Yes, procedurally, but so we have a month before we go to the. Don't have the calendar. So on Wednesday the selectmen hear our budget, but the selectmen have no say on our budget. The next critical meeting is with the Board of Finance, and that's not for, I think, Phil, 3 weeks from now, something like that? March 6th. So we have plenty of time between now and March 6th to have this conversation with the town. So if I believe we can,
Yeah, Steve, I'm just worried that if we don't take a vote tonight.
Well, no,
right?
I was
Oh,
about to
okay,
say, I
okay.
think we should take a vote tonight. I
yeah.
don't know, since it's, let's assume it's on the agenda. I mean, come on, I'm not sure where this falls under Robert's Rules of Order, but I think we should take a vote, and we'll just move forward with that, but it has to be, we're going to have to talk, everyone has to be aware, and I'll make everyone aware of how it's proceeding with conversations with the chief, with the first selectwoman, with the board of selectmen, and then with the board of finance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from a Robert's Rules of Order, if we want to play it, my personal opinion, really safe, security is on the agenda, but we can make a motion to add it to the agenda. If we get a second, we can then have a brief discussion. It's kind of weird, but then have a discussion about the item we want to add to the agenda, and if we are in agreement to do that, then we can vote. So if we really want to dot the i's and cross the t's.
Well, David, since you are the expert on Robert's Rules of Order, would you like to?
Yes, that's
Well,
exactly right. Let me just go over a quick timeline, just so you know. So February 14th, happy Valentine's Day, we are going to be talking to the Board of Selectmen. On March 6th, is that correct? We go to the Board of Finance. Our next meeting here is on March 18th, in person. If you wish to add this now tonight, then yes, you have to take a vote to add it to the agenda, and you can certainly move forward to vote.
To vote.
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
and the reason I think we should is because I've had a conversation with at least one of the selectmen with bad information. I told that selectman I had thought that there was $125,000. So I think it is important that before the Board of Selectmen look at it and the Board of Finance considers it, they know where we sit.
No, it's
If
fine.
the vote fails, it's a conversation, it's a non-starter, right? So
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
So, Robert,
Wait, hang on, wait, would this vote be to add the mile of safety officer, or to put
minute.
voting on adding a officer on the agenda?
So, yeah, I believe it's two motions. So, yeah.
Two-thirds of us have to approve
No.
to put that on the agenda?
No, two people have to approve an added item to the agenda, is I believe the way it is.
No, but we have to vote. Two-thirds of the,
Two-thirds.
You have it added to the agenda, two-thirds of the board has to agree to
Approve
have it
that.
added to the
correct.
agenda. And then we can take a vote.
And then you can take the vote.
And the
Two
vote
steps.
will be, to Chad's point, to,
To vote on, so basically, I think we're trying to add an agenda item.
yeah.
To take a vote on, basically there's two votes. There's a vote, do we add it? And there's a vote, if it passes to add it, a vote to actually
Whether or not.
Yes.
vote on if we want to move forward with the second mile safety
Yes,
officer.
exactly.
Exact, with the town boards, yes, I understand.
And we would do both votes tonight, or tonight is a vote to put it on?
Both tonight. So,
Yeah,
We need a second and a vote.
yeah. Okay, so I would like to make a motion to add an agenda item to take a vote on adding, right. Then we have to have a discussion about what that item is.
I
We need a
vote
second.
yes to add the agenda item.
Yes.
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 Yeah, I think there's a chance for a discussion and then there's a vote. Yeah, oh, sorry, okay. Okay, so I'd like to ask for a vote on the Board of Ed to hire a second mile of safety officer, same as the first mile of safety officer. It's a overtime position, it is a non-contract position. Chief Henyon previously let us know that he likes that the idea of the overtime officer because it doesn't create contractual obligations for the Weston PD. He doesn't have to actually add a staff member to the police department, and there is the flexibility that because he rotates many of the officers, if not all, up to choice, through the program, they all become familiar with the schools. versus if you were to hire an SRO or a dedicated officer, you'd have only one officer who is familiar with the school. So I think it's fair to say, based on our conversation with Chief Henyon, of all the options looked at, SROs and a second mile safety officer, he seemed pretty comfortable with the concept of a second mile safety officer, and he seemed to like the flexibility and the knowledge that his officers gain by rotating.
Let me jump in here. I want to be very careful with my words because obviously it's a sensitive topic and I don't want to share anything that is any way risks any sort of breach of safety. I would not say I would vote against this necessarily. I'm interested in this specifically because of what David just said, that the chief did say this is something to be interested in. But the topic I would bring up to you, Director Rios, is, and I don't think it's my place to share what these recommendations were, but the only way I would vote for this is if, in fact, law enforcement says of the priorities that they shared, that they thought were the smartest ideas, this is the top one. From that executive session, there were multiple different things that specifically Captain Bernanke said that he actually, if you remember, he gave us a three-part list. Yeah, a three-part list. So I am interested in having this discussion and potentially voting yes on this, but if the law enforcement community says that is the single best intervention we can do, keeping in mind there were three specific recommendations that Captain Bernanke also mentioned. I know we don't want to get into what those recommendations were specifically right here, because obviously you want to protect safety and things like that, but I'm interested in law enforcement's recommendation about what is the single best implementation we can make.
And can I just jump in for 1 second before Joe answers that question? Because there's two things that we can share with the community. The first most important one is that it is widely agreed upon by Chief Henyon and Captain Bernanke that we want to keep the fight outside, right? They used that, I believe Captain Bernanke coined that phrase. I think it's a great phrase. It talks about that our law enforcement officers can respond in about 3 minutes, and our goal should be to make sure that if someone shows up at Hurlbut or WIS, which is typically what Captain Bernanke said, the person comes from the outside. It's not somebody in the school. So they both basically said we should be, and Joe, if obviously if I speak out of tune or incorrect, please correct me. But my understanding was that the concept was keep the fight outside. And all of our security measures are by and large designed to keep the fight outside so the police department can show up and neutralize or take care of the threat. So that's my understanding. There is no one catch-all that's going to be the best solution, but the concept is keep the fight outside, let the police department show up, and they can show up very quickly and address the issue from the outside of the building.
Yes, and that's correct. Again, without saying too much, at an open meeting, because security matters, again, are very sensitive and confidential at times. We do feel, and I'll, as Lisa, I'll reiterate, what Lisa already mentioned, our campus is very safe as it stands today. It is very safe as it stands today. So if the recommendation was coming that you wanted a mile of safety officer, and in conversation with the chief and the captain, if we wanted to add whether it was armed security, a armed police officer, then that was one of their recommendations. And I can't speak for them as far as was it the top recommendation or the second or the third. I don't think that'd be fair. I'd like to let them speak for themselves, but I do think that this was in response to were we going to put armed security on the campus, and that the best recommendation that we agreed upon was that a mile of safety officer could possibly be the best answer.
If I recall correctly, though, again, reiterating what you said and what Lisa has said, Chief Henyon felt very strongly that our campus was secure. He was not concerned about the security or lack thereof of our campus. And the reason why there was even a discussion about adding a second mile of safety officer was in response to a call for arming the security guards. And whereas that didn't necessarily get the traction, I think, it seemed to me that Chief Henyon, I wish he were here. This is one of the reasons why I had said I wish that they'd come to the meetings. Because my understanding of what Chief Henyon said was, again, he felt that what we had done and what we are doing as far as our additional funds that we've requested and the fortifying of the schools and things like that, what I understood him to say was that he felt that the campus was secure and that there was no specific need for a second mile of safety officer. There are times when there are threats that he, as the department, can assess when there are threats that happen around school shootings, even at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, when there's extra traffic on the campus, that they frequently will add a second mile of safety officer or make a larger police presence. But my takeaway from Chief Henyon was, that if that's what the board insists, if that's what the board wants to do, not insist, if that's what the board wants to do, then that would probably be the solution. But in his opinion, he didn't feel as if it was necessary. That was my takeaway.
Yeah, look, I would just add this too. I agree. He believes it's, and you believe also it's a safe campus in general. I also believe that there's this layered approach that we're taking, right, to security overall.
Absolutely.
And that in our discussion, without disclosing too much, of course, we were talking about how do we take a good campus, right, in terms of security and make it great, right? How do we make it better? How do we make it great? And I think there are a number of recommendations. And I asked Captain Burdacki that exact question, right? What are your top three? What are your top 3 to 5 recommendations? And so if you're looking at the layered approach, if you're looking at a campus that's good now, that we can make better with, amongst other things that we won't disclose in this meeting, the second mile of safety, I don't see why we wouldn't move forward with that recommendation. That comes from, again, from the chief and the captain.
If I may, and again, I'm being very protective of what was said. The Chief Henyon has been here for, well, last year, numerous public meetings. He was here this year for a public meeting. You've had 2 executive sessions with him. He recommends, as far as staffing, that the next step would be a second mile of safety officer. So I think we're at a point now where, and quite frankly, he's not here because we were talking about the overall district plan. And if he wanted to come back at another time, then you can have him come back another time. But again, he has probably spent at least 6 hours talking to you about the subject. So I think that the time has come to vote
Let me put
on whether you want to continue or not.
Let me put some context to my initial point. It's in the meeting. It sounded like it's a perfectly sensible of different things to put into place. I just want to also point out, for us as a governing body, or not governing, but whatever, regulatory body, I guess, that there were other considerations that also sounded as though, in terms of evaluating what's the best intervention we could make, there were 3 other priorities that were also should be included in a discussion. And I think that if we're going to talk about a layered approach, we have to keep in mind this was not the number one thing. I think it's sensible, specifically because our law enforcement said it's probably a good idea. But we should not forget those other 3 things.
Well, and again, that was discussed during executive session. I'm getting very uncomfortable with talking about the other things.
Yeah, I'll
So
stop.
either or vote or put it on another agenda, with all due respect.
Well, as I think, Lisa, you point out, we have a $330,000 capital budget request. That is for the initiatives outside of hiring somebody. So we're not.
I think Lisa's right. Let's not get into it. I think we can vote. I don't need to. Well, at least I do. Other people can do what they want, but
Yeah,
you're right.
I don't mean to be,
discussion.
pushing a vote one way or the other. I just think that we're getting very close to discussing things in executive session.
We should vote. We should vote, but just recognize if the town says no to sharing the cost, we're going to have to increase our budget by whatever that number is, and we'll get that number, Phil. We'll get a hard number from Chief Henyon of what it costs to put a police officer on campus, during school hours.
Right, and we do have the option, though, if the town says no and we can't afford it, it means taking, I always talk about every dollar we spend should be towards the education of a child first. So if we get to the point where we have to
But the
take a
safety of the
teacher
child
away
is,
or do
the safety
something
of the
else.
child is as important as the education of the child, so.
Right, but
So-
short of, if we can't afford it, we're not committing ourselves
No.
to this. We are taking a pulse or a vote of the board. We're going to ask the town to do a cost share with us. And if the town says no, then...
You have to reevaluate.
Right.
So is there any more discussion that anybody would like to have? So I guess the motion, Jody, is?
To be shared with the town. The cost of which to be shared with the town.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think it's even a cost thing for the vote. I think the vote is really just, do we... Yeah, but is it budget or that we're just asking for a second mile of safety officer, the financing piece?
Recommendation. Recommendation to add, to the budget.
Right, right.
So do
Word
you wanna
budget out, yeah,
Do you want to make that motion then?
yeah. Will this pop up on my screen, Jody, or I have to memorize it? Okay. So, yeah, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education add a second mile of safety officer, effective for the fall school year.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, can we take a voice vote, please? Chad?
Yeah, aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Sharon?
No.
David?
Yes.
Bernie?
Yes.
Peter?
No.
I'm yes. Okay. So from here, Phil, Lisa, we should have a conversation with the chief on
Yes, so,
estimated cost, and then we need to have a
yes,
conversation.
we will
with
add
them.
this to next month's agenda to give you an update on the financing of this endeavor. Well, just basic numbers of the 64,
No, I think the number that we have is, the number that we have discussed between the 100 to 125 is a good range. So I think for
That's
us,
100%.
that's really, that's 60%.
So we need the 60 and the 100%.
Right.
Okay.
So our budget currently has within the budget, all-in cost of approximately $100,000+ for the current mile of safety officer. So we cannot, so it's two parts. We have to have the conversation with the Board of Selectmen just to inform them that this will be an add to the budget. And then the Board of Finance will then vote on the total revised budget, and then the ultimate discussion will be had with the Board of Finance. Board of Selectmen first, then Board of Finance. We also have to keep in mind that there is other things that may need to be adjusted within our current budget that may cause things to shift. So we're still working on those items. So it's not just a single item that we'll have ultimately that will go to the Board of Finance for a final vote, but multiple items.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, we are now on district updates. No, we need.
Wait, Steve, can we back not to security? Can we take a step back though? Because we just did an entire huge district improvement plan that talked about a lot of things besides safety. Can we revisit that for a moment? I know it's gotten late.
No.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to pause for a second. I look at all those numbers. I think much more important than what we think about those numbers, what do you all take away from those numbers? Because I glance at them and overall looks at the story is pretty darn positive. What's your takeaway from this giant vault of data you just shared with us?
Are you talking specifically about the academic piece?
Not
the
academic, also the culture, also HR. Like you gave us a lot of information in one meeting.
I'll talk very briefly about the other components, then we'll talk about the academics. As far as the social emotional learning piece, I think that we are really on the right trajectory. I think that, you know, when you put that into the plan, when you look at one of the data points at the end of the year is how is the survey where we ask specifically students at all the different grade levels how connected you are. This will be the second year that we're doing the survey. And when are we doing it, Tracy? Right after April break, correct? So that'll be important data. I feel really good about where we're headed with the connections and the school climate. Probably because we meet constantly with the principals. Every week, Dr. Henkel and I meet individually with them. I think we're on the right trajectory. When you visit the schools, you see what's going on. I think that's great. I think the sustainability, the HR, we're doing very well where we review staff. We've reviewed it to talk about do the teachers feel supported? How are the new teachers doing? The feedback is very well. They feel supported, and we're asking them, what else do you need to give them future workshops in the spring? So I think that that's going very well with HR. Sustainability, we're moving along with all the green teams. We have such an active green team now at the intermediate school, which feeds directly into the other schools. I think that's going well. I think the EOC is finally gaining some momentum, and we are also valuing the work that has been done up until now by the other the consultants. You know, Tecton did a lot of work for us. So did Silver Petrocelli. I went back and looked at those studies. What are they talking about? Even just from the point of view of how can we use some existent space right now to make a difference. And we talked about that with seating, with room design, things like that. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done all first semester, kind of the overview of those other areas. And I think that with the specific data points and the academics and everything else, I will say it again, the reason that Weston is a great district is that we look at students both in cohorts and individually because of our size, because of the number of schools we have. We can really get at how can we support our kids and how can we turn on a dime to figure out staffing, interventions, moving things around to make it matter now during the course of this year. Not waiting for another, well, next September, we're going to adjust this. No, if we can adjust it now, we're going to do it now with staffing and intervention and multi-tiered levels of support. So that's kind of my overview. Dr. Henkel, take it away.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that you recognize some of the great success that we've had so far as well. Overall, I will say that we all really believe in this work, and we know that we've got the right people in place to problem solve and make the right decisions regardless of the titles that we hold. And so the work that we've been really working from last year, this year, is we've been breaking down the barriers across different areas, silos that maybe we were working separately in the past, and now we're really starting to work more cohesively as a team across the different schools, across the different departments, and across the grade levels. We know we have more pockets to kind of keep unpacking and working towards, but I think that's the change that we are seeing a lot from the fall to the winter this year. Really got a strong team in all the areas, and we're trying to work more on a K-12 continuum and work together to problem solve and make the right decisions for kids, and I think we're headed in the right direction.
The reason I ask this is because I was specifically one of the voices saying we can't just take a look at our performance solely on test scores. And yet, if you look at these test scores, there's a bunch that you all could take a victory lap about. There are still some concerns of some year-to-year gaps. There's certainly a little bit of a trough at 6th grade that's concerning. There's some reading that between 3 and 5, and also some of the science scores are all over the place. But if you're going to look at these numbers, they're very, very positive numbers in many cases. I'm not saying across the board. So especially if last year we're sitting here talking about district improvement plan, and then people throughout the course of the year will get quite concerned about, falling test scores. Well, they look pretty darn good in many, many, many categories. So I think one part of this is we have to be clear about when we should celebrate what we're doing. You all should celebrate it because there's a lot of really positive things in here. The second thing is I just want to say thank you to all of you for packing so much in here that does touch on qualitative measures. Specifically, that whole walkthrough you all just did of the climate initiatives, given that 2 of the comments tonight are about cell phones, and everyone's hinting at mental health and things like that. The statistic that we're not talking about, even though we're doing all this in the district improvement plan, is just the mental health crisis that you hear about our kids going through in this country. So when you're talking about all these initiatives about climate and culture, it's really wonderful to see that in black and white. My only request actually is that you actually have buried in a lot of this commentary, there's ways you could go even further. Meaning, it's not my job to know these things. You all know them much better than I do, but percentage of participation. You're all talking about that in extracurriculars. Participation in sports, number of bullying reports or not. The number of the coins you give out, your kindness coins. 15,000 acts of kindness, that maps to about one every other day for a human life expectancy of about 30,000 days. So, I don't know, track how many kindness things people can get. The parent involvement numbers that you grew from 20 to 200, that's another thing that you can track. Growth of the robotics teams. Well, what's that growth story, and how does that map to numbers? Then also national awards and acknowledgments. The attendance that you talked about, Megan, at those PAC things, but also even Dan, your point about we have to pull these things through different curricula. Okay, what's the statistics of how many different classes can now be touched in some way with digital literacy, with technology learning? These are all things that we could look at quantitatively up there, so it's not this sort of like up-down meter, are the test scores up, are they down? Even though tonight's story is it like, broadly speaking, the test scores are quite good. So I am just heartened by all that, but I also want to make sure that the community sees from a snapshot what we're doing and that we all have as much as possible to evaluate how well you're doing. That's the end of my piece.
No, thank you. And a lot of those data points we do look at internally. And to your point, Chad, it'd be pretty cool to do something kind of like, here's a summary of all the connections we have. Because we look at that for as far as clubs, this and that. I know if I ask any of the principals right now, how many kids are in these clubs, they know exactly how many. Because we do want to see how many kids are actually involved. And are they unique kids, or is it double dipping, and who's not involved? So thank you for that. We'll keep working on it.
Do you have conversations like this with the PTOs?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we spoke. I know Laura and Patty, and I know. I mean, I'm seeing them all shake their heads. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like even with the attendance at Hurlbut, people are taking their kids out to go on vacation. We can remind them, do as much as we can. We talk about that.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
to Chad's point.
All of that.
Yeah.
But again, to kind of highlight, I know what you're saying. I could probably come up with another bulleted list of 20 things that probably would be worth sharing that do speak to more of those qualitative things. Number of clubs, participation rates, all of that.
I think that's actually great information because clearly the more involved the students are in their school and in the school community, the happier they are, the better the environment is. And of course, that's really important to us. I also think that I like the numbers, right? There are a lot of numbers. I like the numbers. I love the fact that we have so much data and it can be so granular, or it is so granular, and you're able to really drill down on it to make the difference. I think sometimes that the numbers can be a little skewed because our sample size is so small. But I love the fact that we have this information and that we're able to act on it and work on it because, quantitatively, it's easier to see things. I do want to ask though, this is now we had the fall, had the winter, getting ready for spring. No surprises, right? We don't want surprises in the spring. Looking at all the numbers, everything that we have, this is just a question. Is there any area of concern, any one area of concern in particular that you can think of that we really need to address so we don't have any surprises in the spring? Is there anything that stands out to you? Are we on track with things? If any deviations that we've seen, are they being addressed? Have they been addressed? Like I said, no surprises.
Nothing that we don't already have work surrounding it to continue revising and updating. I mean, my first thought is some of the MTS, multi-tiered system of supports, and that response to students in need, whether it be math, literacy, or social emotional learning. We are in the process of revising and piloting some of those systems and structures out in the field. So that's being proactive, not reactive. I think when it comes to curriculum, we talk about curriculum, it feels like an always evolving process. As you heard in the budget request, we still have a considerable amount of revision to do across the district, specifically in math, in literacy, in certain state mandated curricula, as well as social studies. So there are aspects of curriculum that with your support and with the final approval, we can increase the number of teams that are working during the Summer Curriculum Academy, but also we are looking to support some of that work in our next 2 professional development days in the district. So that's going to help this work as well, and it should only get stronger.
That's great. The last thing on here, I don't know if anybody else is getting ready to say anything, but the last thing is for the spring in particular, this will be our first year that we'll have worked with CILs, the SILs. So if there's any way that you can include the data that might show the effect that the SILs have had, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. As a reminder, in our June subcommittee meeting, we allocate the entire meeting to the year in review, which is a complete review from each individual department. It definitely takes at least 90 to 2 hours. Last year, I think it was closer to 2 hours than 90 minutes. But it provides them with the audience or the time to really dive into their own individual work versus maybe this setting where to put it all together, because they really deserve the time and the spotlight to highlight their work at their own individual areas. So that is where we've had it live. I don't know if we want to make a revision to that, but as of right now, that is the plan.
No, having it live there is fine, but
Okay.
if we could get a synopsis at this
Exactly.
level, that would
Okay,
be great.
sure.
That's what I was going to suggest. Have it live there, and then what's the review at this level?
No, we said we were going to review it after a year, so, yeah.
Yeah.
And Gina, can we do, I remember the first year, Bernie, I think you were there as well. We had that June meeting in person at WIS, I believe.
I wasn't here
Yeah.
last year.
And I know it's harder with Bernie's schedule, but if we can make it work, I found it to be a lot more beneficial.
Than
we're
virtual?
in a big classroom with the U shape. It was nice to be able
Okay.
to, because I find it a lot more.
Interactive.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see the people's, the souls and yeah.
Great. Not a problem.
Any other comments? Let's move on to new business. It's item 8A, Weston Board of Education policies, regulations, and bylaws, a first read.
Do you want me to talk to that, Lisa, or are you talking
Yes,
to that?
please. No, sorry.
That's okay. So basically, this is an existing policy that we are updating right now that changes some of the responsibilities of who contacts parents, et cetera. With the district's nursing supervisor, she has made her changes in it. We looked at it in policy. We're fine with it. This is a first read. We'll have second read, and we'll vote on it at the next meeting. So I'm not going to go into too much detail for the lack of time that we have. So that's that. Any
Tracy,
questions?
I don't know if you have anything to add. I know you've been working very closely with Kristen Abreu on she's great, by the way, the nursing supervisor, on updating these policies.
Yeah, Kristen is tremendously detail-oriented. We're extremely fortunate to have her. I think your synopsis, this is really just aligning our policy with state requirements. These are pretty standard updates, whether it's grade levels that assessments should be happening during or the timing of those assessments. But we're in good hands with her.
So this is a first read. It'll come back next month for a vote. And stay tuned, because she has about 3 other policies that she's bringing to the policy committee that are, again, updating all of these, and that's important. So.
Okay. District updates, consent agenda, item 9A.
Thank you very much. I have six staffing updates. We have our new hire, our new assistant director for pupil services that's just coming on. She comes from a background, she's from Seymour Public Schools. She's been a interim assistant principal and also an inclusion facilitator. Received her bachelor's from Malloy College, her master's in special education from St. John's, and she also just received her another master's 6th year for an advanced study for the social, emotional, and academic learning from Sacred Heart. So we welcome her and her success as she comes in. Also, we're dealing with 2 retirements. These are with Lori Eagle and Nancy Fogel. They account for about 45 years of experience in the district. Lori with 20 years and Nancy with 25. So we wish them success and happiness as they move off to the next stage of going on. We have 2 resignations. As they move on to the next chapter, Eric Brudvig, who was a transition coordinator, and Alyssa Kaplan, who was a speech and language pathologist. And lastly, we unfortunately we did have 1 termination that we worked through, and also related to that. So thank you very much, and please accept this consent agenda as presented.
And we need to vote on accepting it.
Yep.
Yep. Come on. All right. Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Lisa?
Bill?
Superintendent report.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Superintendent's report. School will be closed tomorrow.
Let's go.
Everybody received that information out of an abundance of caution. We're entering into our last few days before we have winter break, and we look forward to coming back after February break and moving into the spring. I don't really have any other updates. I think that we gave a lot of them in the presentation.
Phil?
Steve's moving this along.
Good evening. I just have 2 quick updates in addition to the mid-year data that we already talked about. To piggyback off of Paul's update, I'm thrilled to share that Allison Brett is joining the district technically tomorrow as our new Assistant Director of PPS for preschool through grade 3. She comes to us with a wealth of experience. She's been an elementary general education teacher, a longtime elementary special education teacher, and most recently an inclusion facilitator coach, as Paul said, in Seymour. We had a really extensive interview process. She impressed everyone at every stage of that process. Her advocacy for students, clear communication, and knowledge of best practices in curriculum and instruction really set her apart. We are also extremely fortunate that we will have 2 weeks for Allison to work alongside Patty Roscoe, who's been serving in an interim capacity in that assistant director role to ensure a smooth transition for our students and families. And I know you all join me in thanking Patty for her assistance over the last several weeks and, quite frankly, over the last few years district-wide. I also just wanted to let you know that I sent out a communication today for our next parent meeting, which will be on February 27th at 5:30 until approximately 7. This meeting will feature a regional representative for the Department of Developmental Services, also known as DDS. Caitlin Drenzik is the presenter for us. She's going to provide a comprehensive overview of the steps that families need to take to qualify for services through DDS, which are relevant for students who have an intellectual disability or, in some cases, autism. And she'll highlight the role that DDS plays in supporting students once they age out of special education services in the public schools. The meeting will be held virtually, it will be recorded, and then will be available on our website following the meeting.
Questions, comments? Tracy?
Actually, I was going to combine the consent agenda with what Tracy just discussed. Is your staff now stable? Do you have, you know what I mean? Like, do you have is your org chart filled out?
So a couple of the positions that Paul just announced for impact us next school year. So we are posting and hiring for the 24-25 school year. At this present moment, we announced Eric Brudvig's transition. We are looking for a transition coordinator, special education teacher. That role is split between the middle school and the high school. And we have some paraeducator needs that are not necessarily due to departure, but due to changing student needs that we're looking for. But we are actively already seeking out people for the positions that will be open for next year, given that they can be more challenging to fill. We're in a good spot district-wide.
Phil?
Thank you. So over the past few months, we have discussed the volatility of the end-of-the-year projection, and this month is really an indication of that. And it will continue to be volatile until we actually close the school year. Just want to give a few updates. Month-over-month change, we're looking at a negative or reduction of $695,000. The main drivers for that are benefits. So during our committee meeting, we did discuss that there's been a change in our health insurance plan and also a change in the census. And based on those two items, we do anticipate that we'll be receiving less from the town's OPEB trust fund, approximately $84,000. I need to work with the town's director of finance to determine what that final number will be. Also want to point out that this will also have an impact to our FY25 budget. I need to also discuss that with the town's director of finance. Other services, as Tracy just mentioned, the needs of students will change throughout the school year. We've had some fluctuation in the various movement in and out of district, and also changes to various programs and placements. So we are seeing a slightly over budget of $110,000. The good news to that is that we are seeing an increase in our excess cost reimbursement from the state. So that is a $70,000. And again, this increase is really driven by individual students, tied in part by the percentage reimbursement from the state. Finally, for our FY25 budget, the board did approve to mitigate our FY25 budget, that we would pre-purchase those items. Just a reminder, that is approximately $350,000. I've factored that into our current projections. In addition to that, there is also discussion of the possibility of funding capital projects from our current surplus. I've also factored that in. I've identified approximately $235,000 that could potentially be funded from our budget, our FY24 operating budget, just to point out that this needs to be or will be discussed with the Board of Finance. Also want to point out that we continue to monitor utilities. We have changes to both the supply rates for electricity and also the supply rate for natural gas. That was changed in November of last year. So I do need to figure out where we will be by the end of the school year. Also wanted to point out that we have a few changes as it relates to electricity. Last year we did discuss that, earlier this year we discussed that we maxed out on our virtual net metering credit. I think that we maxed out in August of this year. So we are not paying for any generation at the plant. We should be receiving a small credit at a significantly lower rate, which we're working with the provider and also with Eversource to receive that credit. The good news for us is that we have residual credits from last school year that will help to reduce our overall utility costs, electric costs for this year. So at the meeting, I did ask for some time just to kind of get some more data to see where we could potentially be by the end of the fiscal year. So that is the update for the month.
Questions for Phil?
I have a question for Phil. You were looking at me the whole time waiting for that. So the current surplus, I'm confused. It's gone up, or unspent funds. Okay, so it's gone down. Okay. After we earmarked the 300 and change.
And the 230.
Right.
Yeah.
To pre-buy for.
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay, so that's why your concern is that things are not going in the best direction at the moment.
Not necessarily that they're not going in the right direction. I just wanted to point out that there's a certain level of volatility as we start to project from this point on to the remainder of the school year. One of the reasons why I point out these things, or I highlight these things as we go through the various months, is just so that the board is apprised of all the various changes that we have. And as I do become aware of those items, whatever they may be, positive or negative, I do inform the board.
Okay. So what's your long-term, you think it's trending, like when we met a couple weeks ago, you said that you think it's trending in the right direction.
Yes.
Is this just an anomaly and you think we're still in good shape?
No, listen, so if you back out that 230 for the capital budget, right, it will be at about a net 200. Right, it will be at a positive 200. So it's still positive. It's not necessarily that I'm seeing that we're at a 37,000 deficit. You know, it's just that we have the 230, right? We did have that discussion during deliberation that we should consider allocating funds to mitigate our capital budget. So I've just put that amount in, assuming that will be ultimately approved by the Board of Finance.
But you're comfortable with the non-recurring recommendation?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we do have the money to.
Yeah, so because we're going to put a.
Yep. I am comfortable with where we are right now that we can continue with that recommendation to pre-purchase.
But they're going to either. So we went for the board, or Phil went for the Board of Finance last week, and told them this is what we wanted to do. I think they were more focused on the non-recurring item, not the capital item.
Right.
We really didn't focus on that. So we're going to go with a budget recommendation to them of the number that we agreed to, the increase of 2.85% or whatever.
Correct. So we will be presenting to the Board of Selectmen, first off, that we will be pre-purchasing $350,000. At some point between, I guess, by mid-March, there may be a further discussion with the Board of Finance to talk about mitigating the capital budget. So I just wanted, based on our discussion, just to say, if all of those items, the 350 plus 230, or whatever that ultimate number is, right? I just pick some items from our list and say, we could potentially do this, this, and this. That number could change. It could be either be 100,000 or it could be zero. And whatever money that is left at the end of the year will be returned to the town.
And the restricted money on the capital piece, that's what it sounds like they're kind of warming up to the concept that we could potentially take some of the unspent funds from this year and use it potentially for capital, which I think last time we talked, you guys
right.
were there. Okay.
So we have not had that discussion with the Board of Finances yet, because our board, before any item goes to the Board of Finance, this board has to approve it. So we have not really brought that up yet. So in addition to those items, to the item just approved, which would be the additional mileage safety officer, I would have to factor that in, and then plus other things that has been discussed. Will have to give a separate report that says this is the ultimate change. We're still waiting on CMERS to see where that would ultimately end up. So once I have as much information as possible before the final vote on the budget in April, I'll bring that forward to the board, and then we'll have a vote. And at that time, I can have discussion. I can have a discussion with the Board of Finance unless I'm authorized to do that via a vote from our board.
Okay. And that basis of my question, I think you answered, was if we can take some of the unspent funds and apply it towards capital, then in theory, we freed up some funds to make sure that we can budget for the second mile safety officer, because we can't prepay that, right? Because it's a
Recurring.
Two different budgets.
Right.
Capital budget.
Right.
Operating budget.
Right. Is it too late at this point to move any money back into the operating?
So you're saying Yes, there is time.
No,
because
no,
that- that-
there's look, the recommendation from the administration was the 300 and some odd thousand dollars for books and other things, knowing there's more, potentially more of a surplus. And we said, well, we said two things. One, is that all you need for non-operating? And the answer to that was yes. And if there's a greater surplus, we suggested, well, why don't you apply that against capital? Right. So that money is still fungible. That that difference between the 350, 60, whatever it was, and the 600. So yeah, there's time to do that. Have a motion to approve Phil's.
I got the language right here.
There you go.
Keep my laptop here. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the fiscal year January 2024 financial report as presented.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Move on to committee reports. Communications Committee.
Just the real quick update is we worked on the language for public comment. Maybe at the next meeting we can just start with 2-minute explanation for. It's intended to bolster public comment, not to chill it. So we really are trying to, from a Communications Committee perspective, bolster public engagement.
Okay. CABE.
No updates.
CES.
Nothing to report on.
Curriculum.
So Curriculum Committee was originally going to meet tomorrow, but due to the weather, we are going to postpone that session. We're hoping to solidify the date today and then release it shortly when the new session will be.
Okay. EOC.
Yeah, indulge me for a minute because I'm going to also combine finance and operations a bit. We added a agenda item, and this was Mike Del Mastro and I, of healthy buildings for our Friday discussion. And now you can see why, because the EOC is advancing this concept. And I may emphasize that we could be the first in the nation to have such a test bed with the Department of Energy. And it's free. The operative word is free. And they actually cover even the recurring expenses after with the vendor. So it's about as close to free as I can get. But David had asked during our our budget workshops about how we prove in investments in like energy efficiency and illumination. And Mike and I also secured state of Connecticut energy audits and assessments for free. And we'll have an ongoing reporting mechanism with them there really to see how we roll out these programs. So that's where the EOC and sort of the Finance and Operations Committee sort of work together, right? Because we're doing a little R&D now to inform bigger decisions on the EOC later. And that was, thank you for indulging me for a minute. It's late.
And just to add to that, Phil went through the finance side of that of the Finance and Operations Committee from an operational point of view. There really wasn't much going on for Mike Del Mastro, other than he has a lot of staff that's been out and injured, so he's playing whack-a-mole trying to make sure that everything's covered in terms of custodians and other items. But he believes he has it covered.
Yes, we are in good shape. Right, Phil?
Yeah, no one is allowed to get sick for me.
Sharon, the Policy Committee?
Let's see. Well, we moved the policy forward for health. Like Lisa said, we have a few more coming our way, and we are still looking at AI, and there are a few policies that are being worked on by the administration that'll come to the committee shortly. That's about it. And I think I'm next with WEF, and we have nothing to report right now. We have another meeting on Tuesday.
So the next scheduled meeting of the board is in person on the 18th of March.
That is correct.
And it'll be here at 6 p.m. at night.
That is correct.
And are there any pending agenda items for the next meeting? We will have on the agenda a discussion about holding our meetings in person, more meetings in person.
I think we're going to talk about that, and also wasn't there a time change request as part of that discussion as well?
Yeah, so we can talk about that.
That's in-person meetings, time of meetings, all that.
Yeah,
Great.
other than that? Anything else? Move to adjourn. I have a motion.
Sure.
So moved.
So moved. And what time, David? Don't we have to do a timestamp?
Don't believe so.
9:10 p.m.
9:10 p.m. May I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.